Just before I was about to walk down the aisle, my future mother-in-law leaned in and whispered, "You'll always be second in his life. Know your place." My fiancé gave a little smirk and said, "She's just looking out for me." I smiled and said, "Good, because I'm looking out for myself too." Minutes later, he was shocked when he saw what I'd done. I should have seen the signs earlier. I met Daniel 4 years ago at a charity event in New York. He was charming, successful, and made me feel special. He had everything I thought I wanted: good looks, wealth, and a good education. He came from an old money family. I, on the other hand, was a self-made lawyer who worked hard for everything I had. His mother, Marjorie, made it clear she didn't want me for her son. She didn't insult me outright, but made little comments like, "Oh, your parents don't have a summer house in the Hamptons? That's different." Or, "It's impressive you got through law school without family connections." She clearly didn't think I was good enough for them. At first, I ignored it. I told myself I didn't need her approval. I loved Daniel, not his mother. But soon, I noticed Daniel never stood up for me. When she said something hurtful, he just shrugged and said, "That's just how she is." If I mentioned it later, he would downplay it. "She doesn't mean anything by it. Babe, you're overreacting." Eventually, I convinced myself love was enough. Even if his mom didn't like me, I was wrong. The wedding was supposed to be perfect. We booked the Plaza Hotel in New York, which was his mother's idea. She took over everything: the flowers, the seating, the food. I wanted a small wedding, but she insisted on a 400-person guest list with her friends and business partners. I let it go. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, I saw Marjorie whisper something to Daniel. He laughed and then looked at me, smirking. When I asked him what she said, he brushed it off. "Nothing, babe. She just thinks it's funny how much you're stressing over small details." That was the first sign something was wrong. On the wedding morning, my bridesmaids were helping me into my dress. The air smelled like roses and expensive perfume. I should have been excited, but I felt uneasy. Then Marjorie walked in, dressed in nearly white, as if she was trying to take the spotlight. She looked at me, leaned in close, and whispered, "You'll always be second in his life. Know your place." My stomach sank. I waited for her to laugh or say it was a joke, but she didn't. She just smiled like she had won. Then Daniel walked in. I turned to him, hoping he'd stand up for me. Instead, he chuckled and said, "She's just looking out for me." In that moment, I knew I was done. I had ignored the red flags for too long. But they didn't know I had already prepared. Over the last few months, something felt off with Daniel. He was always on his phone, going on mysterious business trips, and his best man, Ethan, was acting strangely around me. So, I did what any smart woman would do. I hired a private investigator. What I found was shocking. Daniel wasn't just hiding something, he was hiding someone. Her name was Rebecca, his ex. The same Rebecca his mom always talked about as the one that got away. Daniel and Rebecca had been secretly meeting at the Ritz-Carlton in Boston for months. I had photos, videos, and text messages. He called me boring, saying I was just a placeholder. The worst part? Marjorie knew about it and approved. I kept the information to myself for weeks. I could have confronted him right away or called off the wedding, but that would have been too easy. Instead, I decided to give them a show. I walked down the aisle, calm on the outside but anxious inside. Guests smiled at me. Marjorie smirked, thinking she had won. Daniel beamed, clueless. When we reached the altar, the priest began. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath, looked into Daniel's eyes, and smiled. "Before we begin, I just want to share something with everyone here." I turned to the projector screen behind us. The lights dimmed, and the screen lit up. Then everything, photos, texts, and videos, appeared. Daniel laughing with Rebecca in hotel lobbies. Texts where he called me a chore. The guests gasped. Marjorie froze, and Daniel turned pale, his hands trembling. He looked at me, then at the screen, realizing he couldn't fix it. But I wasn't done yet. I turned back to Daniel, still smiling, and whispered, "I deserve better." Then I let go of his hands. Silence filled the room. Then chaos erupted. Gasps filled the air. A chair scraped the floor as someone stood either in shock or disgust. The atmosphere felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath. Daniel turned pale, his hands shaking at his sides. Marjorie stood frozen, her mouth moving but no words coming out. I turned away from them, stepping toward my bridesmaids. They looked at me with a mix of shock, admiration, and joy. Then Daniel finally spoke. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked. I tilted my head, unfazed. "Looks like proof." Daniel's eyes darted around the room, like a trapped animal. The 400 guests watched him, waiting, whispering. His father, a serious Wall Street mogul, glared at him, clearly disappointed. "This is fake," Daniel said, his voice desperate. He turned to the priest. Can we move on? She's pulling a prank." I laughed. That was the last straw. People started whispering louder. One of his groomsmen even muttered something under his breath and took a step back, not wanting to be part of this mess. Then a sharp voice cut through the noise. "She's not lying, Danny." The room went silent again. I turned. It was Ethan, the best man. His face was tight, jaw clenched. Daniel whipped around to face him. "What the hell are you talking about?" Ethan looked at me, his voice thick. I knew about Rebecca." "What?" Daniel's voice wavered. Ethan didn't look at Daniel, his eyes were still on me. "I wanted to tell you, I tried, but I thought you already knew." My chest tightened. I had expected many things today: shock, anger, maybe a loud outburst, but this was new. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Ethan took a deep breath, shaking his head. "Rebecca, she wasn't the only one." My stomach dropped. I'd prepared for one betrayal, one affair, but this was beyond what I was ready for. "Explain," I said, my voice sharp. Daniel shook his head, his voice frantic. "Don't listen to him, he's just trying to ruin everything." Ethan snapped back at him. "Shut the hell up, Danny." The room was dead silent again. Daniel looked stunned. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Ethan turned back to me. "It's not just Rebecca." He paused, then added, "There were others, and some of them weren't just flings." Everything around me tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. "How many?" I forced the question out. Ethan's eyes met mine, guilt clear on his face. "At least 3 that I know of." The crowd exploded. 3, not just 1, 3. Daniel lunged at Ethan, his face red with anger. "You're lying, you're making things up." Ethan didn't move, he just stared back at him, disgust on his face. "Dude, stop, you got caught, just own it." Marjorie snapped out of her shock and stormed toward me, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She clenched her fists and shouted, "Enough, you think you're so smart, don't you? You think humiliating my son in front of all these people makes you the better person?" I raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh, honey, I don't think I know her." Marjorie's face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this," she warned. Then she raised her hand as if to slap me. The crowd gasped, but before she could touch me, Ethan stepped in. His face was cold and serious. He grabbed her wrist and held it firmly. "Don't even think about it," he said, his voice low and threatening. Marjorie froze, clearly surprised someone was standing up to her. Ethan leaned closer, speaking only to her. "Your son ruined his own life, not her." Marjorie's face twisted with rage. "You were supposed to be his best man. How dare you betray him?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm tired of protecting a man who doesn't deserve it." For the first time, Daniel looked afraid. Guests started shifting in their seats, whispering, and some pulled out their phones, probably recording everything. I overheard bits of conversation. "This is crazy. Can you believe his own best man turned on him?" The tension in the room was unbearable. Then Daniel did something I didn't expect. He turned to me, pale and shaking, and dropped to his knees. The murmurs and gasps spread through the crowd. I felt all eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. Inside, I was calm, but everything was burning. "Baby, please," he begged, his voice cracking. I almost laughed. Baby? This man, this lying, cheating coward, was still trying to talk his way out of it. I crossed my arms. "Get up." His eyes were wild, like a trapped animal. "I can fix this, we can fix this," he pleaded. There it was, the classic manipulation. Not "I'm sorry" or "I made a mistake," just "let's fix this," like it was something we were both in together. One of my cousins scoffed from the back. My bridesmaids whispered angrily, their faces a mix of shock and rage. "I don't think there's anything to fix, Daniel," I said coolly. I turned my back on him, letting the silence speak for itself. Then, a woman's voice cut through the silence. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." Heads turned. A woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was tall and confident, wearing a deep green gown, but her face was filled with fury. Daniel's eyes widened in panic. "No, no, no," he muttered under his breath. Marjorie whipped around to face the woman. For the first time, she looked nervous. "You." she started. I raised an eyebrow. Who the hell is this? The woman stormed up the aisle, her heels clicking sharply. She wasn't looking at me, her eyes were locked on Marjorie. How dare you lecture her about knowing her place when you've never known yours? The woman snapped. The room went silent. Daniel looked like he might pass out. Marjorie's lips pressed into a thin line. You shouldn't be here, she hissed. Oh, I should have been here a long time ago, the woman shot back, turning to me. You must be the fiancé? I corrected her with a cold smile, slowly becoming the ex-fiancé. The woman smirked. You might want to sit down for this. I didn't move. Who are you? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She tilted her head, then turned back to Daniel, her eyes sharp. I'm his father's mistress. Gasps filled the room. I swear I heard a champagne glass drop. Daniel looked like he might faint. Daniel's father, who had been quiet until now, stood up, his face red with anger. Catherine, he began, but... Catherine raised her hand to stop him. No, don't you Catherine me, she sneered, not after you dragged me into this mess. I glanced at Daniel, he looked like he wanted to disappear. Marjorie, Catherine continued, shaking with rage, you have no right to be here. She's fat. Marjorie spat. No right? Catherine laughed harshly. Sweetheart, I have more right than anyone. You think you're the only one who gets to play puppet master? You've been cheating on your husband for years, and now you want to act like some perfect society queen? Wait, what? I blinked, trying to process. The room went dead silent. Daniel turned slowly to his mother. Mom? His voice was uncertain. Marjorie's mouth pressed into a tight line. But Catherine wasn't done. Oh, poor Daniel, she mocked. Your mommy never told you she's been having an affair for years? And guess what? Your father knew. The room erupted. Daniel's father locked eyes with Marjorie, his face cold. Is it true? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Marjorie opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then she snapped. Are you really going to take the word of your expletive? The crowd gasped. Catherine smirked. Expletive, she repeated, her voice sharp. Big talk for someone who's been sleeping with the same tennis instructor for 6 years. Marjorie lost it and lunged at Catherine, but Daniel's father grabbed her wrist and stopped her. Enough, he said firmly. Marjorie stood there, staring at Daniel like her whole world had fallen apart. Mom, is this true? Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. Marjorie's nostrils flared. She looked around, from me to the guests, to the people watching the chaos unfold. I knew that look. It was the look of someone who had lost control. It doesn't matter, she snapped. This is between me and your father. But Daniel shook his head, disbelief washing over him. You made my entire life about being better than Dad, he whispered. You told me he was a disappointment, that he was the reason we had to be careful about our name. He let out a bitter laugh. But all this time, you were just like him. The room was thick with tension. I could see it in Daniel's face. Everything he believed was falling apart. I should have felt sorry for him. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized why he was the way he was. Marjorie had raised him to be cold, calculating, entitled, but now, she had been exposed just like him, and Daniel, for the first time in his life, looked truly alone. And me? I wasn't done yet. I took a slow step forward, locking eyes with him. You and your mother always looked down on me, I said, my voice calm, steady, and final. I let the silence stretch, letting my words sink in. But now, you're the ones covered in dirt. Just as I said that, the doors flew open with a loud bang. A new voice echoed through the ballroom. Sorry I'm late, did I miss anything? I turned, and there she was. Rebecca. The door slammed open, and everyone looked toward the entrance. Rebecca walked in, tall, blonde, wearing a red dress that was way too revealing for a wedding. She held a small purse in one hand and looked calm, way too calm. I couldn't help but smile. Perfect timing, I said loudly, so Daniel could hear. Daniel? I called out. He looked like he'd been hit in the stomach. What the hell are you doing here? He asked, his voice full of panic. Rebecca stepped forward, totally unfazed. Relax, sweetheart, you invited me. The whole room gasped. His fists clenched. I didn't. Rebecca pulled out her phone. No? Then who sent me this? She asked, showing everyone the screen. It was a message from Daniel, sent 2 nights ago. I can't stop thinking about you. I wish this wedding wasn't happening. You were always the one. The room went silent, then exploded with whispers. Is he serious? His fiancée is right there. I turned back to Daniel, raising an eyebrow. Interesting, you told me you hadn't talked to her in months. His face went pale. Rebecca smirked. Oh, honey, he's been talking to me for years. Daniel staggered back. That's not, he tripped over his words. Rebecca folded her arms. You're really going to deny it? Then she turned to me, calm and unaffected by the chaos. I wasn't going to come, she said. I thought I owed you that much, but then, she waved her phone. He begged me to meet him last night, so I decided to come and see the show. Another gasp from the crowd. Daniel spun to face me. She's lying. Rebecca laughed. Am I, babe? She checked her phone again. Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket, fumbling with it. His eyes widened as he read it. I knew what he saw, dozens of texts he had sent her just hours before the wedding, begging her to meet him secretly. Marjorie snapped. You idiot, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her voice was sharp and full of rage. Daniel looked at her, stunned. Mom? You've humiliated this family, Marjorie continued, her voice low and threatening. You had one job, just one. Daniel blinked, looking like a little boy caught doing something wrong. You think this is about you? Marjorie snapped. Do you know how hard I worked to make this wedding happen? And now look at what you've done. Daniel flinched. I didn't, he began. Stop lying, Daniel. For the first time, Marjorie looked at him with nothing but disgust. You're pathetic. She's fat, Daniel muttered. The crowd exploded again. Daniel's father stayed silent, his jaw clenched. Ethan stood beside him, arms crossed. Daniel looked lost, like he finally realized there was no way out. Then he turned back to me. Please, his voice cracked. I messed up, but we can fix this. I stared at him for a long moment, then grabbed my bouquet and threw it in his face. Gasps filled the room, some even laughed. The bouquet hit his chest and fell to the floor. Daniel just stood there, shocked. I straightened my dress, turned to the guests, and smiled. Thank you all for coming, I said sweetly. The wedding is off, but please, enjoy the food, it's already paid for. Then I turned and walked away. And let me tell you, it was the best walk of my life. So, what happened next? Daniel? He was completely disgraced. His law firm quietly let him go because scandals don't mix with business. Word spread fast in New York. No one wants to hire a lawyer with that kind of reputation. Marjorie? She was furious but too embarrassed to show her face at social events. Being exposed for her own affair made her a social outcast. Rebecca? She went back to her ex-boyfriend. She never wanted Daniel long-term. She just liked knowing she could have him whenever she wanted. Ethan? It turned out he had feelings for me all along. No pressure, just seeing where things go. And me? I went to Paris on my honeymoon alone, using Daniel's black card. I had no regrets. As I sipped champagne, looking out at the Seine at sunset, I realized something. I had spent years trying to prove myself to that family, but in the end, they weren't worth my time.
I never thought I'd find something that would change my life while cleaning out Grandpa's old study, but there it was, a letter that would tear my family apart. My name is Callie, and until last week, I was just the younger daughter trying to make her mark in our family's fashion business. The letter fell from between the pages of his favorite book on textile manufacturing. The paper was yellowed, but his handwriting was unmistakable, bold strokes that commanded attention, just like he did in life. Need help with those boxes? My father called from the doorway. I'm good, I answered, already unfolding the letter with trembling fingers. Just found something interesting. The first line made my heart stop. My dearest Callie, if you're reading this, I've been gone for some time, and certain truths need to come to light. I sank into Grandpa's old leather chair, the one that still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco. The words blurred as I read about his vision for the company's future, and his explicit wish for me to inherit a controlling share of Winslow Designs. You've got your mother's eye for fashion and your father's business sense, he'd written. But more importantly, you understand what this company means to the people who work here. Renee sees numbers. You see family. My half-sister Renee had been running the company since Grandpa died 3 years ago. She'd made it clear that my role was strictly limited to design work, nothing more. Now I understood why she'd been so adamant about keeping me away from the business side. Callie. My mother's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway, elegant as always in her tailored blazer. We're ordering lunch. Do you want anything? I quickly folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. I'll be down in a minute. She lingered, studying my face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Just feeling nostalgic, I lied, forcing a smile. Found some old photos. After she left, I pulled out my phone and took pictures of the letter, my hands still shaking. Through the study's window, I could see Renee in the parking lot, pacing as she talked on her phone. She gestured sharply, her face tight with anger, a familiar sight lately. The sound of approaching footsteps made me look up. Graham from marketing stood in the doorway, his usual easy smile in place. Your sister's on the warpath again. Something about quarterly projections. When isn't she? I tried to sound casual, but my voice cracked slightly. He stepped into the room, lowering his voice. Everything okay? You look like you've just discovered a family secret. If he only knew. I'm fine, I said, standing up quickly. Just dusty in here. Graham's eyes lingered on me for a moment too long, but he didn't push. Well, if you need someone to talk to. Thanks, I cut him off, perhaps too abruptly. My mind was already racing ahead, trying to process what this meant. The letter wasn't just about inheritance. It was proof that Renee had known about this all along. She must have hidden it after Grandpa died. As I watched her through the window, still on her phone, I remembered something else she'd said last week during a board meeting. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that protect the family legacy. Now I wondered exactly what she'd meant by that. The letter felt heavy in my pocket as I gathered my things to head downstairs. I had no idea how to handle this information, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same between us again. Through the window, I saw Renee end her call and look up at the study. Our eyes met briefly, and for a moment, I could have sworn she knew exactly what I'd found. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The game was about to begin, whether I was ready or not. I spent 3 days wrestling with what to do about Grandpa's letter before finally working up the courage to show it to my mother. The family conference room felt smaller than usual as I watched her read it, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping the paper tighter with each line. Where did you find this? She asked, her voice unnaturally calm. In Grandpa's old study, while we were clearing it out. I fidgeted with my watch, a nervous habit I thought I'd broken years ago. Mom, did you know about this? Before she could answer, the door swung open. Renee strode in, followed by our father. Perfect timing as always. Know about what? Renee asked, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She froze when she saw the letter in Mom's hands. Family meeting time, I guess, Dad said, closing the door behind him. He must have noticed the tension because he stayed standing, one hand on the back of Mom's chair. Mom handed the letter to Renee, who barely glanced at it before tossing it onto the conference table. Oh, this old thing? I found it years ago. It's not legally binding. You knew about it? The words came out sharper than I intended. And you didn't think to mention it? It was written when you were barely out of college, Callie. Grandpa was getting sentimental in his old age. Renee's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Besides, the board already approved the current leadership structure. The board that you personally selected? I couldn't help myself. Years of being sidelined bubbled to the surface. Girls, Mom interrupted, but her voice lacked its usual authority. She looked tired, older somehow. Dad cleared his throat. Maybe we should discuss this with the company lawyers. There's nothing to discuss, Renee said, checking her phone. We have more pressing matters. The show contract needs attention, and our Q3 projections. Stop deflecting, I cut in. This isn't about contracts or projections. This is about you hiding Grandpa's wishes. Renee's phone clattered onto the table. His wishes? You want to talk about wishes? I've spent the last decade building this company while you were off finding yourself at design school. That's not fair, Dad started, but Renee wasn't finished. Life isn't fair, Dad. I've earned my position. Every late night, every difficult decision, every sacrifice, that's what keeps this company running. Not some sentimental letter. Mom stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. Enough. Both of you. She turned to me, her expression softening. Callie, your grandfather loved you, but Renee's right. The company's current structure is legally established. The betrayal stung worse than I expected. So we're just going to ignore his wishes? We're going to do what's best for the company, Renee said, her composure returning. Speaking of which, I need to review your latest designs. The board has concerns about the direction of the new collection. I felt the blood drain from my face. My designs were the one thing I thought were safe from her interference. I haven't heard any concerns, Dad said, frowning. It's a recent development. Renee gathered her things. We'll discuss it in tomorrow's meeting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have calls to make. As she left, I caught a glimpse of Graham through the glass walls, watching our family drama unfold. He quickly looked away, but not before I saw the concern on his face. Mom touched my arm. Callie, honey, don't. I pulled away, gathering the letter from the table. I need some air. Outside the conference room, I heard Renee's voice from her office. Yes, everything's under control. The situation has been handled. I paused, wondering who she was talking to. Through the crack in her door, I could see her pacing, phone pressed to her ear. No, there won't be any changes to our arrangement. I'll make sure of it. What arrangement? And with whom? As I walked away, I realized something. Renee wasn't just protecting her position. She was hiding something bigger, something that made her willing to bury Grandpa's letter. And I was going to find out what it was, even if it meant risking everything I had left in this family. I wasn't supposed to be in the office that late, but I'd fallen behind on my designs after the family meeting drama. The empty building felt different at night. Quieter, but somehow more alive with secrets. That's when I heard voices from the conference room. The intellectual property transfer needs to happen before the end of the quarter. Renee's voice, sharp and clear. Monarch Fashions is getting impatient. I froze outside the door. Monarch Fashions was our biggest competitor. The board won't approve this, a man's voice responded. And your sister's designs are a significant part of the portfolio. My sister won't be an issue. Renee's tone made my blood run cold. Once the deal goes through, she'll have no choice but to accept it. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. The design review meeting tomorrow, it wasn't about quality concerns. She was planning to sell my work to our competitors. Someone's here. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. I ducked into the nearby supply closet, heart pounding. Footsteps passed by, then faded. When I finally emerged, shaking, I bumped straight into Graham. Jesus! I yelped, dropping my phone. Sorry. He caught it before it hit the ground. I thought I was the only one still here. His eyes narrowed. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I grabbed his arm. We need to talk. Not here. 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet corner of a nearby bar. I told him everything, the letter, the family meeting, and what I'd just overheard. Graham ran a hand through his hair. That's corporate espionage. It's illegal. It's worse than that. I pulled out my phone, showing him photos of my latest designs. These aren't just clothes. They're an entirely new manufacturing process. More sustainable, more efficient. It could revolutionize the industry and make Monarch Fashions a fortune. Graham leaned back, whistling low. No wonder they're interested. I need proof. I wrapped my hands around my untouched beer, something concrete to show my parents. Graham was quiet for a moment. I might be able to help. Marketing gets copied on most executive communications. Give me a day or two. Why would you risk helping me? His eyes met mine. Because I've watched you pour your heart into this company while your sister treats it like a personal piggy bank. And maybe because he stopped, cleared his throat. Because it's the right thing to do. My phone buzzed, a text from Renee. Design review moved to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. She's moving fast, Graham muttered, reading over my shoulder. She knows I heard something. I stood up, suddenly feeling exposed. I need to get home. Back up my files before. Too late. Graham held up his phone, showing an internal IT notification. System maintenance tonight. All servers down for routine updates. She's deleting my work. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Everything I've done for the past year. Not everything. Graham pulled out a USB drive. I backed up the design server last week for the marketing presentations. It's not current, but I hugged him before he could finish, surprising us both. When I pulled back, his face was flushed. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. He glanced at his phone again. The real question is, what are you going to do tomorrow morning? I thought about Grandpa's letter, about all the years of being pushed aside, about Renee's voice saying, "My sister won't be an issue." "I'm going to that meeting," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "But first, I need to make a call." "To who?" "Martha Jenkins, our former head accountant. She left suddenly last year after a fight with Renee. I think it's time I found out why." As I left the bar, another text came through, this one from an unknown number. "Meet me tomorrow, 7 a.m., Carter's Diner. I have something you need to see." Martha. The game wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about survival, and I was done playing by Renee's rules. Carter's Diner looked exactly like the kind of place where secrets get shared over lukewarm coffee. Martha Jenkins sat in a corner booth, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, fingers drumming nervously on a thick manila envelope. "You look just like your grandfather," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. He had that same look when something wasn't right. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Graham. "Meeting delayed to 9 a.m. Renee called emergency board session first." Martha noticed my expression. "Bad news. Just buying us some time." I gestured to the envelope. "What did you find?" She slid it across the table. "Financial records from the last 18 months. Renee's been moving money through shell companies." At first, I thought it was just creative accounting, but then I found this. The documents showed a complex web of transactions, all leading to one destination, Monarch Fashions. "She's been selling them information for over a year," Martha continued, her voice dropping. "Design specifications, manufacturing processes, supplier contracts. But that's not the worst part." My coffee grew cold as Martha explained how Renee had been systematically undermining our company's value, making it ripe for a hostile takeover. My designs weren't just being sold, they were being used as leverage. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Martha's eyes dropped to her coffee. She threatened to expose some personal matters. My grandson's medical bills, some loans I took from the company. I'm not proud of staying quiet. My phone buzzed again. "Graham, board meeting getting heated. Your mother looks furious. Where are you?" "I have to go." I gathered the documents, but Martha caught my wrist. "There's something else." She pulled out one last paper. "Your grandfather's original will. The one Renee replaced after he died." My hands shook as I read it. The letter I'd found wasn't just a wish. It was legally binding. Renee had committed fraud. Why show me this now? Because yesterday, Renee started the process to dissolve the company entirely. Martha's voice cracked. "Your grandfather built this company to last generations. He'd rather see it burn than become what Renee's planning." Outside the diner, Graham was waiting in his car. "Your father's looking for you," he said as I got in. "The board's voting on something big." "I know what they're voting on." I showed him the documents. "We need to make copies before." A car horn blared. Through the rearview mirror, I saw a black SUV accelerating toward us. "Hold on." Graham swerved, barely avoiding the impact. The SUV scraped past us, then sped away. "Was that Dash? Renee's car?" I finished, my heart pounding. "She must have followed me." Graham pulled into a side street, killing the engine. "This isn't just business anymore, Callie. She's desperate." "She should be." I pulled out my phone, dialing my father's number. It went straight to voicemail. "What's your play?" Graham asked softly. I stared at the documents in my lap. Proof of fraud, theft, and betrayal. Everything I needed to destroy my sister's life. But the cost. "I can't let her sell the company," I said finally. "But this isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about protecting what Grandpa built. What our whole family built. Even if it tears that family apart?" Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Renee. "Last chance, little sister. Walk away now, or everyone loses everything." Attached was a photo of our mother at her desk, head in her hands, looking broken. The message was clear. This would destroy her. "She's trying to manipulate you," Graham said, reading over my shoulder. "I know." I took a deep breath, straightening my spine. "And she's about to learn that was a mistake." As we pulled back onto the main road toward the office, I realized something. Sometimes protecting your family means fighting them. And I was done playing defense. The board meeting was in 30 minutes. It was time to show Renee exactly what kind of sister she'd created. The boardroom felt like a powder keg when Graham and I arrived. Dad was pacing by the window. Mom sat rigid in her chair, and Renee stood at the head of the table mid-presentation. The screen behind her showed graphs of declining profits, graphs I now knew were manipulated. "Nice of you to join us," Renee said, her smile razor-sharp. "I was just explaining why selling to Monarch Fashions is our only viable option." I dropped Martha's envelope on the table. "Funny, I was about to explain why that's fraud." The room went silent. Dad stopped pacing. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "These documents," I continued, spreading them across the table, "show exactly how our company's been systematically undermined for the past 18 months. "Careful, Callie," Renee warned, but her composure cracked slightly. A board member picked up one of the papers. "These transaction records. Are these authentic?" Before Renee could respond, the boardroom door opened. Martha Jenkins walked in, followed by two men in suits. "They're authentic," Martha said. "And these gentlemen from the SEC would like to verify them." Renee's phone clattered to the floor. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I pulled out Grandpa's original will. "Just like I understand why you replaced this after he died." Mom stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "Renee, what is she talking about?" "She's desperate," Renee snapped. "Making wild accusations because she's jealous." "Miss Caldwell," one of the SEC agents cut in, "we have some questions about certain offshore accounts linked to Monarch Fashions." The next few minutes were chaos. Board members arguing, agents asking questions, Dad trying to maintain order. Through it all, I watched my sister's carefully constructed world crumble. Then I saw her hand slip into her bag. "Stop her," Graham shouted, but it was too late. Renee pulled out a USB drive and held it up like a weapon. "You want to play hardball?" Her voice shook. "Fine. This drive contains evidence of every questionable decision this company has made for the past 30 years. Including yours, Mother." Mom went pale. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." Renee's laugh was hollow. "We all go down together. That's what family means, right?" I moved toward her slowly. "This isn't about family for you. It never was. You don't know anything about family." She jabbed the drive in my direction. "You were always the golden child, the one with natural talent. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow?" "My shadow." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You've controlled everything since Grandpa died." "Because I had to." Her voice cracked. "Because if I didn't prove I was better than you, they'd all see I was nothing but a mistake." The room went deadly quiet. Mom made a small, wounded sound. "Miss Caldwell," the SEC agent said quietly, "please hand over the drive." For a moment, I saw something break in my sister's eyes. Then she straightened, smoothing her jacket with trembling hands. "You want to know the truth, little sister?" She pressed the drive into my palm. "Check the personnel files from 30 years ago. See what kind of family we really are." As the agents led her out, she paused at the door. "I never wanted to hurt you, Callie. I just couldn't let you win. Not again." The board meeting dissolved into emergency sessions. While lawyers and agents swarmed the building, I sat in Grandpa's old study, staring at the drive in my hands. "You don't have to look," Graham said softly from the doorway. "Yes, I do." I plugged in the drive. "Whatever's in here, it's part of who we are." As the files loaded, I noticed Mom standing in the hallway, watching me with tears in her eyes. She knew what I was about to find. The truth about our family was just a click away, and I wasn't sure any of us were ready for it. The personnel files from 30 years ago lay scattered across Grandpa's desk like pieces of a broken mirror, each one reflecting an ugly truth. Mom stood in the doorway, her silence heavier than any explanation could be. "You were his secretary," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Before you married Dad. Before you owned the company. Callie. And Renee." I held up the termination notice with trembling hands. "Grandpa tried to force you to get rid of her." Mom's voice cracked. "He said it would ruin the company's reputation." His reputation. The pieces clicked together like a grotesque puzzle. Renee wasn't just my half-sister. She was living proof of Grandpa's hypocrisy, of his affair with his young secretary before Mom married Dad. "So you took over the company," I continued, the truth burning in my throat. You and Dad, you forced Grandpa out. To protect both of you. Mom stepped into the room, reaching for me, but I backed away. Everything I did was to give you both a chance. Stop. My hands slammed against the desk. Just stop lying. Grandpa's letter, the will, it wasn't about me being talented. It was guilt. He was trying to make amends. A knock at the door made us both jump. Graham stood there, his face grim. They're transferring Renee to custody. She's asking to see you, Callie. The police station's interview room was cold and sterile. Renee sat across from me, her designer suit replaced by standard-issue clothes, her makeup smeared from crying. Now you know, she said quietly, why I could never be good enough. You didn't have to destroy the company, didn't I? Her laugh was bitter. Every time I walked these halls, I saw him. In the portraits, the plaques, the legacy everyone worshipped. The man who wanted me erased. So you decided to erase everything? I decided to build something of my own. She leaned forward. Monarch offered me control of their Asian division. No family strings, no ghosts. Just merit. By stealing our designs? My designs. Your designs. Renee's eyes flashed. Look at the drive again, sister dear. Look at the original sketches from Mom's early days. Your revolutionary techniques? They're all variations of her work. Work she did while carrying me, alone and scared, before your father saved her. The room spun slightly. I gripped the table's edge. We're more alike than you think, Callie, Renee continued. Both living in someone else's shadow. The difference is, I chose to step out of it. By committing fraud, by surviving. She stood up as the guard approached. You can keep the family legacy. I'm done pretending we were ever really family. Later, in Grandpa's study again, I found Graham reviewing the old sketches. He looked up as I entered. She was right, I said before he could speak. Everything I thought was mine, everything I was proud of, it's all built on lies. Callie. No. I started gathering the designs, my hands shaking. The company, the inheritance, all of it. It's poison. I can't. Stop. Graham caught my wrists. You're not thinking clearly, aren't I? I pulled away. My grandfather was a hypocrite who tried to erase his own daughter. My mother built her success on stolen designs. My sister's going to prison. Tell me, Graham, what part of this should I be thinking clearly about? Through the window, I could see the factory floor where generations of workers had built our family's dream. Now it all felt tainted. My phone buzzed, a message from Martha. There's something else you need to see. Something about your grandfather's final days. I almost deleted it. Almost walked away from all of it. But Renee's words echoed in my head. We're more alike than you think. Maybe that was what scared me most of all. What are you going to do? Graham asked softly. I stared at the message, feeling the weight of 3 generations of secrets pressing down on me. I'm going to find out how deep this really goes, I said. Even if it destroys what's left of us. Martha's final revelation hit like a thunderbolt in Grandpa's study. She handed me a worn leather journal, his private diary from his last months alive. He knew what Renee was planning, Martha said quietly. All of it. The Monarch deal. The company's dissolution. He knew because he'd tried the same thing 30 years ago. The diary entries detailed a failed attempt to sell the company to Monarch, back when Mom was just his secretary. He'd wanted to escape the scandal of her pregnancy with Renee. My phone buzzed, a text from Graham. Renee's being released on bail. She's heading to the office. I have to go. I clutched the journal. There's one more conversation we need to have. I found Renee in the design studio, methodically shredding sketches. Mom stood in the doorway, watching helplessly. You knew, I said, holding up the journal. You found this years ago, didn't you? Renee's hands stilled. Like grandfather, like granddaughter. Both of us trying to destroy what we couldn't control. That's not, isn't it? She turned, eyes blazing. You found his letter and immediately used it against me. Just like he tried to use Mom's pregnancy to force her out. Stop it, both of you. Mom's voice cracked like a whip. There's something you need to know. She pulled out an old envelope, yellowed with age. Your grandfather didn't write that inheritance letter to Callie. I did. The room went silent except for the hum of the shredder. What? Renee whispered. I forged it, Mom continued. Because I knew what you were planning with Monarch. The same deal they offered your grandfather. The same deal that would have erased both of you from existence. My legs felt weak. Why didn't you just stop her? Because this company was built on secrets and control, Mom said. I wanted you both to choose differently. To be better than we were. Renee laughed, a hollow sound. Better? I was never even good enough. The unwanted child. The living reminder of scandal. You were everything. Mom's shout echoed off the walls. Everything I fought for. Everything I built this company to protect. Both of you were. Then why pit us against each other? I demanded. Because I was afraid. Mom's composure cracked. Afraid you'd both make the same mistakes I did. Choosing power over family. Control over love. Renee moved to the window, staring at the factory floor below. The Monarch deal isn't final yet. It doesn't matter, I said. The SEC. It matters. She turned back, her expression different somehow. Softer. Because I made the same offer to every board member Grandpa tried to sell to 30 years ago. They all kept his secret. And they'll keep ours. Understanding dawned. You weren't trying to destroy the company. I was trying to expose its foundation. She met Mom's eyes. So we could rebuild it. The right way this time. Mom stepped forward, reaching for both of us. For the first time in years, neither of us pulled away. Your grandfather's last entry, Martha said from the doorway, making us all jump. You should read it. I opened the journal to its final page. My greatest regret isn't the choices I made, but the legacy of fear I left my family. May they find the courage to choose love instead of power, truth instead of control. May they build something better than I ever could. Renee touched the page gently. We could, build something better. Together, I asked, hardly daring to hope. She smiled, a real smile this time. Well, you've got the talent, I've got the business sense, and Mom's got the original designs. Seems like a solid foundation. A new foundation, Mom corrected, squeezing our hands. Outside, the factory hummed with life. Generations of work, secrets, and hope woven into its very walls. But inside this room, something else was being built. Something stronger than revenge, more powerful than control. Something like forgiveness. 6 months later, I stood in the renovated design studio, watching workers install the new sign. Winslow and Caldwell Designs. The morning sun caught the letters, casting twin shadows across the floor. Still feels strange, doesn't it? Renee appeared beside me, coffee in hand. She looked different now, softer around the edges, but somehow stronger too. Good strange, I replied, accepting the second cup she offered. The SEC investigation had ended with a settlement and restructuring rather than criminal charges. Thanks partly to Mom's influence and partly to Renee's careful documentation of the board's past indiscretions. Sometimes leverage was better than revenge. The new collection's ready, Renee said, leading me to the workroom. Mom's original designs, your modern techniques. The perfect blend of past and future. The samples hung like promises on the racks, classic silhouettes reimagined, family heritage woven into every stitch. But something else caught my eye, a framed sketch on the wall. Is that Dash? Grandpa's first design, Mom said, entering behind us. From before he owned the factory, when he was just a tailor with dreams. And demons, Renee added quietly. Like all of us. Mom touched the frame gently. But we choose what to do with them. Graham appeared in the doorway, folders in hand. Board's ready for the presentation. Actually, I said, there's something else we need to do first. Later, we stood in the factory's main floor, surrounded by our workers, the real foundation of our family's legacy. Mom took the microphone first. 30 years ago, I made choices out of fear, she began. Today, my daughters are making different choices. Better ones. Renee stepped forward next. Starting today, every employee becomes a shareholder. This company's success should benefit everyone who builds it. The announcement was met with stunned silence, then growing applause. As I watched faces light up with hope and possibility, I felt something shift inside me, the last weight of revenge lifting, replaced by something lighter. There's one more thing, I added, unveiling the plaque we'd prepared. The Martha Jenkins Training Center, offering design and business education to all employees' children. Martha, standing in the crowd, pressed a hand to her mouth. Because family, Renee continued, isn't just about blood. It's about choice. After the celebration, I found myself back in Grandpa's study. My study now, shared with Renee. The old leather chair still held traces of pipe tobacco, but new memories were layering over the old. You know, Graham said from the doorway, when I first met you, I never thought this was how things would end up. Who says this is the end? I smiled, touching the journal on my desk. No longer Grandpa's secret diary, but our family's ongoing story. With blank pages waiting to be filled. Renee appeared behind Graham. Ready for tomorrow's meeting? Monarch's CEO wants to discuss a proper partnership this time. On our terms, I nodded. On family terms, Mom corrected, joining us. As they left, I noticed something tucked into the journal, a photo I'd never seen before. Young Mom, holding baby Renee, with Grandpa standing awkwardly beside them. On the back, in his bold handwriting, some mistakes become our greatest blessings if we're brave enough to embrace them. I added the photo to our new company timeline, right beside one taken this morning, Renee and me flanking Mom, all of us smiling real smiles. The factory hummed below, its rhythm changed but familiar. Like our family, it was being rewoven into something new, something stronger. Not perfect, but authentic. Not flawless, but honest. Through the window, I watched our workers leaving for the day, many still discussing their new stake in the company's future. Some stopped to admire the new sign, its dual names gleaming in the setting sun. Revenge might have started the story, but love, complicated, messy, choosing to be better love, that's what would write its future chapters. And this time we'd write them together.
I never thought I'd be hiding in my own office bathroom, pressed against the cold tile wall, straining to hear my mother-in-law plotting to destroy my career. But there I was, holding my breath as Veronica Everhart's voice drifted through the ventilation system from the conference room below. My name is Callie, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I was having a pretty decent day. I'd just closed a major deal with our biggest client, the kind of win that usually meant celebration drinks and proud smiles from my husband Nolan. Instead, I was learning just how much my family wanted me gone. She's not Everhart material, Bianca. She never was. Veronica's voice carried that familiar aristocratic edge that always made me feel like I needed to check if there was dirt on my shoes. Your brother made a mistake marrying her, but we can at least fix the business side of things. I heard my sister-in-law's eager reply. I can take over her accounts within a month. My MBA dash. Yes, dear, we know about your Master of Business Administration. Veronica cut her off. The board meeting next week is our chance. I've already spoken to several members about restructuring the sales department. With your qualifications and the family name, it should be a smooth transition. My hands started shaking. 6 years of building client relationships, of proving myself worthy of the Everhart name, and they were going to erase it all in a single board meeting. I pressed my palm against my mouth to keep from making a sound as Bianca continued outlining their plans. What about Nolan? Bianca asked. He's always been protective of her. Leave your brother to me, Veronica replied. He needs to understand that some sacrifices are necessary for the family's legacy. The familiar click of Veronica's heels signaled their departure, but I stayed frozen in place, my mind racing. Every awkward family dinner, every backhanded compliment, every time Veronica had introduced me as Nolan's wife instead of by my position in the company. It all made terrible sense now. I finally stepped out of the bathroom on unsteady legs, catching my reflection in the mirror. My carefully applied makeup couldn't hide how pale I'd gone, and my dark hair was coming loose from its professional updo. I looked exactly like what Veronica had always seen, an outsider trying too hard to fit in. The walk back to my office felt like moving through fog. I barely noticed Jasper, our operations manager, until he touched my arm. Callie? You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a smile. I'm fine, just thinking about the Langston account. You mean the one you just landed? He raised an eyebrow. The one that's going to boost our quarterly numbers by 30%? Yeah, that must be really stressful. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Nolan. Dinner tonight? Mom wants to discuss something important. My stomach lurched. Of course she did. I typed back. Can't tonight. Working late on Langston contract details. His response was immediate. Come on, Cal. You know how she gets. Please. 6 years ago, I'd fallen in love with Nolan's warm smile and kind heart. I'd thought his family's cold shoulder was just temporary, that they'd warm up once they saw how dedicated I was to both Nolan and the company. Now I realized I'd been naive. I looked at the family photos on my desk, holiday gatherings where I stood slightly apart, corporate events where Veronica managed to place Bianca front and center. All those little signs I'd ignored. "Sorry," I texted back. "Really can't make it." I turned to Jasper, who was still watching me with concern. "Actually, I could use your help with something. What do you know about board meeting procedures?" He tilted his head, curious. "Enough to be dangerous." "Why?" I squared my shoulders, feeling the first spark of anger cutting through my shock. "Because I think it's time I learned how to play this game by the Everhart rules." My phone buzzed again, probably Nolan or Veronica, but I ignored it. I had 1 week to save everything I'd worked for, and I wasn't going down without a fight. The morning after discovering Veronica's plan, I walked into the office to find Bianca sitting at my desk, flipping through my client files. She looked up with that practiced, innocent expression I'd seen her perfect over years of family dinners. "Oh, Callie, I hope you don't mind. Mother thought it would be good for me to shadow you for a while, learn the ropes of the sales department." I set my coffee down harder than necessary, watching it slosh against the sides of the cup. "Funny, no one mentioned that to me. It was just decided this morning." Bianca's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, I've already scheduled meetings with the Langston Group for later today. I thought I could take point on their account, give you a break." My stomach dropped. The Langston account was my biggest win, worth millions to the company. "That won't be necessary. Mr. Langston specifically requested to work with me." "Well, things change." She straightened her designer blazer. "Mother thinks it's important to have an Everhart handling our premium clients." Before I could respond, Nolan appeared in the doorway. "There are my 2 favorite ladies. Getting along already?" I watched him cross the room, noting how he kissed Bianca's cheek first before coming to me. Small gestures like that had been adding up lately, like grains of sand in an hourglass measuring the time until my marriage crumbled. "Honey," I said, keeping my voice steady, "can we talk privately?" In my small office bathroom, the same one where I'd overheard their plot, I told Nolan everything. The conversation I'd overheard, Veronica's plans, Bianca's sudden appearance at my desk. With each word, I watched his face shift from concern to that careful blank expression he wore during difficult business negotiations. "You must have misunderstood," he said finally. "Mother would never dash." "Stop." My voice cracked. "Please don't do that. Don't pretend this isn't exactly what she's always wanted." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood according to the family photos in his office. "What do you want me to do, Callie? Tell my mother and sister they can't be involved in the family business. I want you to stand up for me. For us." I reached for his hand, but he stepped back. "It's complicated, Dash." "It's really not." I felt something break inside me, like a dam giving way. "Your mother is trying to push me out of the company, and you're letting her." A knock at the door made us both jump. Jasper's voice came through. "Callie? Mr. Langston is on line 1. He's not happy about something." Nolan seized the interruption like a lifeline. "We'll talk about this later, okay? Just try to work with Bianca. For me." I watched him leave, then pressed my forehead against the cool mirror. When I finally returned to my desk, Bianca was gone, but she'd left her mark. My files were reorganized, my calendar had been accessed, and there was a new photo frame on my desk, a picture of her and Nolan as children, their mother beaming between them. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasper. "Emergency meeting called for 3 p.m. Board members flying in. Something big happening." I looked out my office window at the city below, remembering the day Nolan had proposed. We'd been right there in that park across the street, and he'd promised me we'd build something amazing together. Now I wondered if I'd been building on quicksand all along. My computer pinged with a new email from Veronica, addressed to the entire sales team. "Please join me in welcoming Bianca Everhart as our new Associate Sales Director. Her expertise will be invaluable as we move forward with restructuring the department." I closed the email and opened my client files instead. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. But first, I needed to call Mr. Langston and find out exactly what Bianca had said to upset our most valuable client. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about being so damn good at what you do that they destroy themselves trying to take you down. The quarterly reports landed on my desk like a bomb waiting to explode. 3 weeks of Bianca's leadership had done exactly what I'd expected. The Langston account was in shambles. I flipped through page after page of mishandled transactions, unauthorized promises, and botched negotiations. My phone lit up with Mr. Langston's name for the third time that morning. I'd been dodging his calls, buying time while I figured out how to fix this mess without destroying what little was left of my marriage. "You need to see this," Jasper said, appearing in my doorway with more papers. "Bianca just submitted a proposal to restructure our entire client portfolio. She's planning to redistribute all your accounts." I skimmed the document, my hands shaking. "She's splitting up the Langston subsidiaries between 5 different account managers. That'll destroy the integrated service model we spent 2 years building." "That's not all." Jasper lowered his voice. "Look at page 4. There it was, buried in corporate jargon. A recommendation to terminate my position due to redundancy in the organizational structure." The office suddenly felt too small, too warm. I grabbed my laptop and the reports. "I need to talk to Nolan. Now." I found him in the conference room with Veronica and Bianca, all 3 heads bent over some presentation. The family resemblance had never been more striking, or more alienating. "We need to discuss the Langston account," I said, trying to keep my voice professional despite the fury building in my chest. Veronica's perfectly lined lips curved into a smile. "Bianca has everything under control, dear. No need to worry yourself." "Under control?" I dropped the reports on the table. "She's destroyed 6 months of work in 3 weeks. Mr. Langston is threatening to pull his business." Bianca's face flushed. "I'm implementing a more efficient system, Dash. You're implementing chaos." I turned to Nolan. "Look at the numbers. Really look at them." He picked up the report, but Veronica placed her hand over his. "Nolan, darling, remember what we discussed about emotional decisions versus business ones?" "Emotional?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Okay, let's talk business. Bianca's efficient system has cost us 15% in projected revenue. She's alienated our biggest client, and now she's trying to dismantle the entire sales structure to cover her incompetence." "That's enough." Nolan's voice cracked like a whip. "Callie, you're obviously upset about the changes, but attacking Bianca isn't helping." "Attacking her?" I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. "I'm trying to save our company." "Our company?" Veronica's voice dripped with disdain. "I think you're forgetting your place, dear. This is the Everhart family business." Something snapped inside me. I pulled up my email on the conference room screen and opened Mr. Langston's latest message. "Read it. Out loud, Nolan. Read what your sister's leadership has done to our relationship with our most valuable client." The room fell silent as Nolan scanned the email, his face growing paler with each line. Bianca shifted in her seat, her confident facade cracking. "This isn't. I didn't." She stammered. "Mother," Nolan said quietly. "Could you and Bianca give us a minute?" "Absolutely not," Veronica replied. "Whatever needs to be said can be said in front of family." "Fine." I pulled up another document. "Then let's talk about this termination proposal. Were you planning to tell me about it, Nolan? Or were you going to let your sister handle that too?" His head snapped up. "What termination proposal?" But before anyone could respond, Jasper burst into the room. "Mr. Langston is here. In person. And he's furious." Through the glass walls, I could see Mr. Langston stalking across the office floor, his face thunderous. Bianca went pale, Veronica straightened her spine, and Nolan looked like he might be sick. I gathered my things, a strange calm settling over me. "I'll handle this. But afterward, we're going to have a very different conversation about the future of this company and our marriage." As I walked out, I heard Veronica hiss, "Do something, Nolan." But for once, my husband stayed silent, and that silence said everything about where we stood. I spent 3 hours in damage control with Mr. Langston, watching 6 years of carefully built trust crumble like sand between my fingers. When I finally emerged from the conference room, my throat was raw from talking, and my hands trembled as I gathered my things. "How bad is it?" Jasper asked, falling into step beside me. "He's giving us 2 weeks to fix everything Bianca messed up, or he's taking his business elsewhere." I stopped at my office door, staring at the nameplate that now seemed more like a countdown timer. "Where is everyone?" "Emergency board meeting." "They didn't invite you." Of course they hadn't. I dropped into my chair, noticing the family photo on my desk had been replaced again, this time with a framed copy of Bianca's Master of Business Administration diploma. The pettiness of it almost made me laugh. My phone buzzed with a text from Nolan. "Where are you?" "Mother's presenting the restructuring plan." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started downloading every file, every email. Every piece of evidence of what Bianca's leadership had done to our clients. I wasn't going down without proof. Callie. Jasper's voice was unusually serious. There's something else you should know. I overheard Veronica on the phone earlier. She's been meeting with Harrison and Mills. My stomach dropped. Harrison and Mills was our biggest competitor. Why would she dash? They're discussing a merger. One that would effectively dissolve our sales department and integrate their team instead. The room spun slightly. A merger would mean everyone in my department would lose their jobs. Not just me, but the entire team I'd built. All to get rid of one unwanted daughter-in-law. My phone rang, Nolan again. This time I answered. Where are you? He sounded stressed. The board's asking questions about the Langston situation. Are they? Funny how nobody asked me. You know, the person who just spent 3 hours saving our biggest account. Don't be difficult, Callie. Just come up here and dash. And what? Watch while your mother and sister dismantle everything we've built? Listen to more lies about how I'm the problem. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, he said quietly, they're not lying about everything. The numbers dash. The numbers are manipulated, and you know it. My voice cracked. But that's not even the point anymore. When was I going to hear about Harrison and Mills? His sharp intake of breath told me everything. Who told you about that? Does it matter? Were you going to tell me before or after I was unemployed? It's not what you think. Mother says dash. Mother says. Mother thinks. Mother wants. I pressed my palm against my burning eyes. When was the last time you thought for yourself, Nolan? More silence. Then, just come to the meeting. Please. We can figure this out. I looked at Jasper, who was pretending not to listen while organizing files. I thought about my team, about the clients who trusted us, about the life I'd thought I was building. No, I said finally. I'm done playing by Veronica's rules. You want to know where I am? I'm in my office, preparing evidence of every mistake, every mishandled account, every illegal promise Bianca has made in the last month. And tomorrow morning, I'm taking it all to the board, with or without your support. Callie, don't dash. One more thing. I cut him off. Check your email. Mr. Langston sent over his conditions for staying with us. Spoiler alert. They all involve removing Bianca from his accounts and restoring the original management structure. So you have a choice to make, your mother's pride or the company's future. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were steady now, anger burning away the uncertainty. What do you need? Jasper asked quietly. Access to the archived files from before Bianca started. And I hesitated, then pulled out my wedding ring, setting it on the desk next to Bianca's diploma. Some boxes. I think it's time I cleared out my office. Sometimes the hardest part of fighting back isn't facing your enemies. It's accepting that the people you thought would fight beside you are the ones you're fighting against. The call came at 3 a.m. I was still at the office, surrounded by stacks of evidence I'd compiled against Bianca, when Jasper burst through the door. Nolan's been in an accident. The world tilted sideways. I grabbed my keys, dropping files across the floor, but Jasper caught my arm. Veronica's already at the hospital. He hesitated. She's telling staff you're not family. Of course she was. I snatched my phone, dialing Nolan's number out of habit, only to hear it ringing from his empty office down the hall. The sound echoed like a ghost. I'll drive, Jasper said quietly. At the hospital, Veronica stood like a sentinel outside the ICU, Bianca at her side. Their matching Everheart blue blazers made them look like guards at a fortress I wasn't meant to breach. He's in surgery, Veronica announced before I could speak. Family only. I'm his wife. For now. She smiled thinly. Though given recent events, I imagine that status might change soon. My hands clenched. What happened? He was upset after your little ultimatum. Bianca's voice dripped with accusation. Driving too fast, I expect. The implication hit like a slap. They were blaming me for this. Before I could respond, a doctor approached with updates about head trauma, internal bleeding, and induced coma. The words blurred together as I watched Veronica and Bianca nod along, making decisions about my husband's care without even glancing my way. I need to see him, I said when the doctor finished. That won't be necessary. Veronica's voice could have frozen hell. We've got everything under control. In fact, given the circumstances, I think it's best you return to the office. Someone needs to handle the transition. Transition? Bianca pulled out a folder. Emergency succession protocols. As the only blood relative with executive experience, I'll be taking temporary control of operations while Nolan recovers. You can't dash. Actually, we can. Veronica produced another document. Nolan's will is quite clear about succession rights. Blood relatives only. You should read it carefully, dear. Consider it professional development. My vision tunneled. All those nights Nolan had worked late with his mother on estate planning. This was what they'd been doing, ensuring I could never threaten the precious Everhart legacy. Mrs. Everhart? A nurse appeared. Your son is asking for someone. It sounds like Cal. Hope flared in my chest, but Veronica stepped forward smoothly. That would be Calvin, his childhood friend. We'll explain that he can't be here right now. The nurse frowned. I thought Dash. Thank you, we'll handle it. Veronica's tone left no room for argument. I watched them disappear into the ICU, these women who'd orchestrated my removal from every aspect of my life with surgical precision. Even now, they were rewriting my existence, turning Cal into Calvin, erasing me from Nolan's story one piece at a time. My phone buzzed. An email from Bianca to the entire company announcing her temporary leadership position, effective immediately. Below it was a message from Mr. Langston. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Non-negotiable. Callie. Jasper touched my shoulder. There's something else you should see. He handed me his tablet, showing security footage from the parking garage. Nolan's car leaving the office. A second car, Bianca's, following close behind. The timestamp matched exactly when I'd issued my ultimatum about the board meeting. The police should dash. The police, Veronica's voice cut in as she returned, have already ruled it an accident. Single car mechanical failure. Such a tragedy. She placed special emphasis on mechanical, her eyes meeting mine in clear challenge. The message was crystal clear. They'd thought of everything. They always did. I looked through the ICU window at my husband, lying still among machines and tubes. Then down at the wedding ring I'd put back on for the hospital visit. 6 years of marriage, of fighting to belong, of loving a man who'd let his family write me out of his life before he'd even met me. You win, I said quietly, turning to leave. Oh, darling, Veronica called after me. We won a long time ago. You're just finally catching up. But she was wrong. This wasn't over. Because she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I had nothing left to lose. The 9 a.m. meeting with Mr. Langston wasn't going well. I sat across from him in his downtown office, watching 6 years of relationship building crumble as Bianca fumbled through another presentation. Miss Everhart, he interrupted, you've just proposed exactly what your predecessor, Mrs. Everhart here, advised against 3 months ago. Bianca's perfectly manicured nails dug into her portfolio. The market conditions have changed dash. The only thing that's changed is the leadership. He turned to me. Callie, what's your take on this mess? Before I could answer, Veronica swept into the room, all designer suit and practiced concern. Mr. Langston, I apologize for the confusion. Callie is no longer authorized to speak on behalf of Everhart Trading. Then I'm no longer authorized to do business with you. He stood straightening his tie. My contract was with Callie. She leaves, we leave. That won't be necessary. Veronica's smile didn't reach her eyes. We have something that might change your mind. She slid a document across the table, a copy of the confidentiality agreement I'd signed when joining the company. Highlighted in yellow was a clause about client relationships post-employment. If Callie attempts to maintain any professional contact with Everhart clients, Veronica explained smoothly, we'll be forced to pursue legal action. Against both parties. Mr. Langston's face hardened. You'd sue your own clients? We protect our interests. Veronica's voice could have frozen hell. By any means necessary. The meeting ended shortly after, with Mr. Langston storming out and Bianca trailing behind, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. I stayed seated, staring at the agreement that had just destroyed my last hope of fighting back. You know, Veronica mused, collecting her things, this could have been avoided if you'd just accepted your place. As Nolan's wife, nothing more. Is that why you had Bianca follow him that night? Her hand paused over her briefcase. Careful, dear. Accusations like that could be considered slander. And with Nolan still in his condition. My phone buzzed, Jasper calling. I ignored it. He'd been trying to reach me all morning with updates about the security footage, but what was the point now? Veronica had thought of everything. You should visit him, she continued. While you still can. The divorce papers are being drawn up as we speak. He's in a coma. Power of attorney is a wonderful thing. She patted my shoulder as she passed. Don't worry, we'll make sure he's well taken care of. By family. I waited until she left before pulling out my own copy of Nolan's will. The one I'd found in his home office the night before. The blood relatives only clause was there, highlighted and initialed by Veronica herself. But there was something else, something that had been nagging at me since I'd read it. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered. "The footage is gone," Jasper said without preamble. "Someone wiped the entire system last night. But I managed to save Dash. It doesn't matter anymore." I traced the words on the will with my finger. "They've won. Callie Dash." But I just realized something. I sat up straighter, reading the clause again. Veronica's been so focused on blood relatives, she forgot about blood types. What? Nolan's medical records. I need them. And I need everything you can find about Bianca's birth. Why? I thought about Veronica's perfect planning, about how she'd orchestrated every detail of my removal, about how sometimes the most obvious truth is hidden in plain sight. Because according to this will, only blood relatives can inherit. And I don't think Bianca is one. The silence on the other end stretched for a moment before Jasper let out a low whistle. That's why she's always been the favorite. Veronica's been overcompensating. Exactly. And if we can prove it, Dash, they'll destroy you. They already have. I stood, gathering my things. But maybe that's what I needed. Because now I can see what they couldn't. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning. What's it about? I looked at my reflection in the office window, seeing not the broken woman they'd tried to create, but someone stronger. Someone dangerous. It's about making sure everyone loses together. The emergency board meeting was already in session when I walked in, Jasper at my side with a manila envelope tucked under his arm. Veronica stood at the head of the table, mid-speech about succession planning, while Bianca sat in Nolan's chair like she'd been born to it. "I'm afraid this is a closed meeting," Veronica said, her smile razor-sharp. "Actually, I placed a stack of documents on the table. I think you'll want to hear this." "Security." Bianca reached for the phone, but Jasper was faster. "Already handled. They're quite interested in the footage of you following Nolan's car that night." The color drained from Bianca's face. Veronica's smile didn't waver, but her knuckles went white around her pen. "The board has already accepted Bianca's position," she said smoothly. "The will is quite clear about blood relatives, Dash. Funny you should mention blood." I opened the first folder. "Did you know Nolan has typo-negative blood? Rare, but well documented in his medical records." And according to these, I slid another document forward. His father was typo-positive. The room went deadly quiet. One of the board members picked up the paper, frowning. "Basic genetics," I continued. "It's impossible for two type A parents to have a typo child. But that's not the interesting part." Veronica's composure cracked. "This is ridiculous, Dash. The interesting part," I raised my voice, "is Bianca's birth certificate. The original one, not the amended version filed 2 years later." Bianca's hands began to shake. "Mother?" "Don't," Veronica snapped, but it was too late. "Your mother's been overcompensating for years, hasn't she, Bianca? Making sure you got every advantage, every opportunity. Not because you earned it, but because she felt guilty. That's enough." Veronica slammed her hand on the table. "No, it's not." I turned to the board. "The will specifies blood relatives only. Bianca isn't one. She never was." Chaos erupted. Board members talking over each other, Bianca crying, Veronica trying to regain control. Through it all, I stayed standing, watching years of careful manipulation unravel. Then a voice cut through the noise. "Let me see those papers." Everyone froze. Nolan stood in the doorway, pale and leaning heavily on a walker, but very much awake. "Darling," Veronica rushed forward. "You should be in bed, Dash." I said, his voice was hoarse but firm, "Let me see the papers." I handed him the folder, our fingers brushing. His hand was cold, but his grip was strong. "How long have you known?" he asked his mother as he read. "Nolan, please, Dash." "How long?" "Since the day she was born." Veronica's voice cracked. "Your father. He would have destroyed us if he'd known. I had to protect our family. By lying? By trying to destroy my marriage? By having Bianca follow me that night? That was an accident." Bianca sobbed. "I just wanted to talk to you, to explain, Dash." "Enough." Nolan's voice was ice. He turned to the board. "I trust you'll find my wife's evidence compelling enough to void any decisions made in my absence." The chairman nodded quickly. Veronica stepped forward one last time. "Everything I did was for this family." "No," Nolan replied. "Everything you did was for control. And now you've lost it." He held out his hand to me. "Take me home, Cal." I moved to support him, feeling his weight settle against me. As we turned to leave, Bianca called out, "What about me?" I looked back at her, seeing not the polished executive, but a scared woman whose entire identity had just shattered. "That depends," I said quietly. Are you ready to earn your place instead of stealing someone else's? She met my eyes for the first time without hostility and nodded slowly. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about being strong enough to offer them a chance at redemption, but on your terms, not theirs. As we left, I heard Veronica's heels clicking rapidly away in the opposite direction. She might have lost this battle, but I knew better than to think the war was over. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, I had my husband back and we had a company to rebuild. Together. 6 months after the board meeting showdown, I stood in my office, packing the last of my personal items. Not because I was leaving, quite the opposite. I was moving into a larger space down the hall, one with a view of both the city and the future I'd fought so hard to secure. The door opened and Bianca stepped in, carrying a stack of reports. She'd traded her designer suits for more practical business and the constant need to prove herself had been replaced by something quieter, more genuine. The Langston Quarterly Review, she said, placing them on my desk. I've highlighted the areas where we could improve efficiency. I flipped through the pages, noting her careful analysis. Good work. Why don't you present these findings at next week's meeting? She looked startled. Are you sure? You earned it. I met her eyes. The right way this time. She nodded, understanding the weight of those words. As she turned to leave, she paused. Have you heard from Mother? Not since she moved to Europe. I didn't mention the occasional threatening emails or the lawyers she still sent our way. Some wounds needed time to heal, or at least scar over properly. Nolan appeared in the doorway, leaning on his cane. His recovery had been slow but steady, much like the rebuilding of our relationship. Ready for lunch? Almost. I gathered my things, including the small sonogram photo I'd been waiting to show him. Some news deserved to be delivered in person. We took the elevator down together, Bianca heading to her department while Nolan and I stepped out into the bright spring day. The park where he'd proposed was blooming again, life returning after a long winter. Jasper called, he said as we walked. The merger with Harrison and Mills is officially dead. Turns out they were more interested in Mother's promises than our actual business model. I squeezed his hand. Are you okay? With all of it? He stopped, turning to face me. You know what I realized while I was in that coma? I could hear everything. Every scheme, every lie, every time someone tried to speak for me instead of to me. His voice softened. And every time you fought for what we built together. We all fought for something, I said, thinking of Bianca's slow journey toward redemption, of Jasper's quiet loyalty, of Mr. Langston's faith in second chances. Some of us just took longer to figure out what was worth fighting for. Speaking of fighting, he pulled out an envelope. These came this morning. Mother's lawyers again. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Instead, I handed him the sonogram photo. I think we have more important things to focus on. His eyes widened as he understood what he was seeing. Is this? Due in winter. I smiled. Apparently the Everhart legacy will continue after all, just not quite how your mother planned. He pulled me close, and for a moment we just stood there, surrounded by spring flowers and possibilities. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Bianca about an urgent client matter. Back to work? Nolan asked. Always. I took his arm as we turned back toward the office. But this time we're doing it right. Building something worth inheriting, not just something worth fighting over. As we walked, I thought about revenge and redemption. About how sometimes the best victory isn't in destroying your enemies, but in becoming strong enough to offer them grace. About how family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice, about trust rebuilt and lessons learned the hard way. The envelope from Veronica's lawyers crinkled in my bag, unopened. Whatever threats or schemes it contained could wait. We had a company to run, a baby to prepare for, and a future to build. And this time we were building it together, on a foundation of truth instead of manipulation, of earned trust instead of inherited power. It wasn't perfect, family never is, but it was ours. Sometimes the happiest endings aren't about winning or losing. They're about finding the strength to write your own story, even when others try to write it for you. And our story, it was just beginning.
The steady beep of medical equipment was the first thing I noticed when I clawed my way back to consciousness. My throat felt like sandpaper, and the fluorescent lights above made me squint. The room was drowning in flowers, roses, lilies, and arrangements I couldn't name. Their overwhelming sweetness made my stomach turn. My name is Alara, and this wasn't how I'd planned to spend my 28th birthday. You're awake. Zane's voice cracked as he grabbed my hand. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. "I've been here every day. The doctors weren't sure when you'd." I tried to speak, but only managed a weak cough. A nurse appeared with ice chips, and Zane helped guide them to my mouth. As the cool relief trickled down my throat, fragments of memory started flooding back. Headlights, screeching tires, my parents' voices. My parents. I whispered, though deep down, I already knew the answer. The way Zane's face crumpled told me everything. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he said, squeezing my hand tighter. They didn't make it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the truth, but it was already burrowing into my chest like a physical wound. When I finally opened them again, I noticed something else was wrong. Very wrong. I couldn't feel my legs. "Zane." My voice shook. I can't move my legs." He pressed the call button, and within minutes, Dr. Lin appeared. He was gentle but direct as he explained the extent of my injuries: severe spinal trauma, partial paralysis from the waist down. The words washed over me like waves, each one pulling me further under. "With intensive physical therapy, there's a chance for partial recovery," Dr. Lin said, his kind eyes meeting mine. "But I want to be honest. It's going to be a long road." I nodded mechanically, still processing. That's when I noticed Zane's mother, Loretta, hovering in the doorway. She'd always reminded me of a bird of prey, elegant but sharp-eyed. Now she was looking at me with what seemed like genuine concern, but something in her expression made me uneasy. "We're all here for you, dear," she said, gliding into the room. Her perfectly manicured hand patted my shoulder. "Zane's already arranged to take time off work to help care for you." "You have?" I turned to Zane, surprised. He'd been climbing the corporate ladder at his firm for years, barely taking weekends off. "Of course," he said, but something flickered across his face. Doubt? Fear? "I've been thinking. Maybe this is a sign. About what really matters." He reached into his pocket, and my heart stopped as he pulled out a small velvet box. "I know the timing might seem strange, but life is precious. Will you marry me, Alara?" The ring was beautiful, probably worth several months of his salary. But as he slipped it onto my finger, all I could think about was how cold it felt. Behind him, Loretta was beaming, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I need time to think," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Everything's happening so fast." Of course," Loretta jumped in before Zane could respond. "You need rest, dear. We should go." She practically pulled Zane from the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the suffocating scent of flowers. As I drifted off to sleep, my mother's voice echoed in my memory. "Trust your instincts, sweetheart. They'll never steer you wrong." Something about Zane's proposal, about Loretta's too perfect concern, set off warning bells in my head. But maybe that was just the grief talking. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger than a marriage proposal. Coming home should have felt comforting. Instead, I wheeled through my childhood house feeling like a stranger. Ramps had replaced the familiar steps, and grab bars now dotted the walls like metallic scars. The changes were necessary, but they only emphasized how different everything had become. Zane had moved in temporarily to help with my transition home, though his definition of temporary seemed to stretch with each passing day. He'd already filled half the closet in my parents' old room with his designer suits, even though he wasn't working anymore. "The contractors did an amazing job with the modifications," Loretta announced, running her hand along one of the new railings. She'd been here every day since my return, rearranging things without asking. "Though these old curtains really need to go. They're so dated." Those curtains were hand-sewn by my mother. I gripped my wheels tighter, knuckles turning white. "They're staying. Now, dear." Loretta's voice took on that syrupy tone I was growing to hate. "You need to focus on healing, not clinging to the past." "Zane, tell her." Zane, who'd been absorbed in his phone, looked up with that increasingly distant expression. "Maybe Mom's right. A fresh start might be good." Before I could argue, the doorbell rang. Zane's father, Clyde, walked in without waiting for an answer. He rarely spoke, but his presence filled the room like smoke, making it hard to breathe. "The estate lawyer called," he announced, addressing Zane rather than me. We should discuss the house situation soon. What house situation? I asked, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. Just some paperwork, Zane jumped in quickly. Nothing to worry about right now. I watched them exchange glances, a whole conversation happening without words. The engagement ring felt heavy on my finger, like a shackle rather than a promise. Later that evening, after the Holloways finally left, I wheeled into my father's study. The room still smelled like his pipe tobacco and old books. But something was off. The antique desk, passed down through 3 generations, looked emptier somehow. I opened drawers, counting the missing items. Dad's vintage fountain pen collection, Mom's first edition books, the small Tiffany lamp that always sat in the corner. Each absence felt like a fresh wound. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend Lila. Coming by tomorrow. No excuses. Miss your face. 2 hearts. I smiled, my first genuine one in days. Lila would understand. She'd always seen through people's facades, including Zane's perfect boyfriend act when we first started dating. The sound of footsteps made me quickly close the drawer. Zane appeared in the doorway, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. You should be resting, he said, moving behind my wheelchair. Let me help you to bed. I can manage, I insisted, but he was already gripping the handles. Don't be stubborn. You heard what Dr. Lin said about overdoing it. As he wheeled me toward the bedroom, I caught a reflection in the hallway mirror. The concern on his face looked rehearsed, like an actor who'd forgotten his motivation halfway through a scene. Zane, I said carefully, where's Dad's pen collection? His hands tightened slightly on the wheelchair handles. Oh, your mom probably packed it away somewhere. You know how she liked to reorganize. The lie hung between us like poison gas. My mother had never touched those pens. They were Dad's pride and joy, and she respected that. Right, I said, letting him think I believed him. Must be packed away somewhere. That night, after Zane fell asleep, I lay awake listening to his steady breathing. The man next to me felt like a stranger wearing my boyfriend's face. The same face that had proposed to me in the hospital, offering security when I was at my most vulnerable. My mother's voice echoed in my head again. Trust your instincts. Well, my instincts were screaming now. And Lila's visit tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. I needed someone who would tell me the truth, even if it wasn't what I wanted to hear. Something was very wrong in this house, and I was going to find out what it was, with or without the use of my legs. Lila arrived like a burst of fresh air, bringing coffee and her no-nonsense attitude. One look at my face and she knew something was wrong. We settled in the sunroom, away from Zane's constant hovering. Spill it, she said, handing me my favorite caramel latte. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. I told her everything. The missing items, the whispered conversations, the way Zane and his parents exchanged loaded glances when they thought I wasn't looking. With each word, the knot in my chest loosened slightly. I knew something was off with that proposal, Lila muttered. Who proposes to someone who just lost their parents and woke up paralyzed? That's some soap opera-level manipulation. Before I could respond, voices drifted in from the hallway. Loretta and Zane, arguing in harsh whispers. You're taking too long, Loretta hissed. The insurance money won't last forever, and that house. I know what I'm doing, Mother, Zane snapped back. Just stick to the plan. Lila's eyes met mine, wide with concern. We sat in tense silence until their footsteps faded. Lila leaned forward, her voice low. Have you checked your mom's jewelry box? The one with the locket. My heart dropped. Mom's locket, a family heirloom passed down through generations. I hadn't even thought to look for it yet. Lila helped me wheel to my parents' bedroom, where the jewelry box sat on the dresser. My hands shook as I opened it. Empty. Maybe Zane moved it somewhere safe? Lila suggested, but we both knew better. Later that afternoon, during one of Loretta's inevitable visits, I saw it. There, hanging around her neck, was my mother's locket. The same one that had contained pictures of my grandparents, the same one my mother had promised would be mine on my wedding day. That's a beautiful necklace, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. Loretta's hand flew to her throat. Oh, this old thing? Zane gave it to me. Said he found it in a drawer somewhere. Really? I wheeled closer, noticing how she took a small step back. Because that's my mother's locket. The one she wore every day for 30 years. The color drained from Loretta's face. I had no idea. Zane must have. Must have what? I cut her off. Stolen it from my dead mother's jewelry box? Just like someone's been stealing everything else in this house. Now, dear, you're getting yourself worked up over nothing. Her voice took on that condescending tone I'd grown to hate. You're still grieving, seeing things that aren't. Take it off. My words came out like ice. Excuse me, the locket. Take it off and give it to me. Now. For a moment, something ugly flashed across Loretta's perfectly made-up face. Then slowly, she unclasped the necklace and dropped it into my outstretched hand. I suppose grief can make people rather possessive, she said, smoothing her designer blouse. I'll just go find Zane. As she clicked away in her expensive heels, I opened the locket with trembling fingers. The pictures inside weren't of my grandparents anymore. They'd been replaced with photos of Zane as a child. That witch, Lila breathed, looking over my shoulder. Al, you need to do something. This isn't just about missing stuff anymore. They're trying to erase your family. I closed my fingers around the locket, feeling the metal bite into my palm. You're right. But first, I need proof. Real proof that shows exactly what they're doing. I might have an idea about that, Lila said, pulling out her phone. My brother works in security systems. How do you feel about some hidden cameras? For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than grief and confusion. Something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. Call him, I said, clutching my mother's locket. It's time to show the Holloways exactly who they're dealing with. As Lila made the call, I watched Loretta through the window, talking intensely with Zane by their car. They had no idea what was coming. Good. Let them think I was just the grieving, helpless girl in the wheelchair. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lila's brother installed the cameras while Zane was at another mysterious meeting with his parents. 3 days later, I watched the footage on my laptop, my hands gripping the armrests of my wheelchair, so tight my knuckles turned white. The insurance money's nearly cleared. Zane's voice crackled through the speakers. He was standing in my father's study with both his parents. But she's getting suspicious about the missing items. Clyde's usually stoic face showed rare animation. The house is worth 10 times that insurance payout. We need to convince her to sell before she realizes. Before she realizes what? Loretta interrupted, pacing. That her perfect boyfriend is helping us strip her family home bare? That we've been selling her inheritance piece by piece. My stomach lurched. I forced myself to keep watching. She trusts me, Zane said, but his voice wavered. The engagement was a good move. Once you're married, everything becomes community property, Clyde finished. Including this house. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath coming in short gasps. The doorbell rang, making me jump. Dr. Lynn stood outside, early for my weekly checkup. Alara, he said, studying my face with concern. Are you all right? I wheeled back to let him in, noticing how his eyes swept over the increasingly bare walls. He'd known my parents for years, had been our family doctor since I was a teenager. They're stealing everything, I blurted out. Zane and his parents, they're selling my family's belongings. Planning to take the house. Instead of looking surprised, Dr. Lynn's expression turned grim. I was afraid of something like this. Your father came to see me a week before the accident. He was worried about Zane's sudden interest in your family's finances. My heart stopped. What? He asked me to give you this if anything happened to them. He pulled an envelope from his bag. I was waiting for the right time, but it seems that time is now. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter in my father's precise handwriting, along with several documents. My dearest Elle, it began. If you're reading this, something has happened to your mother and me. I've noticed some concerning behavior from Zane recently. Questions about our assets, our property values. Call it paranoia, but I've taken steps to protect you. The documents were legal papers. My father had created a trust before his death, putting the house and most of their assets in my name with ironclad conditions. Even marriage couldn't touch it. They can't take any of it, I whispered, looking up at Dr. Lynn. The house, the insurance money, it's all protected. Your father was a careful man, Dr. Lynn said softly. He wanted to make sure you were truly protected, not just physically cared for. The front door opened, Zane returning. I quickly handed the papers back to Dr. Lin, who tucked them into his medical bag just as Zane entered. Dr. Lin, Zane smiled his perfect smile. "How's our patient doing?" "Showing remarkable strength," Dr. Lin replied, his tone professional but cool. "We'll need to schedule some additional physical therapy sessions. Perhaps 3 times a week." I caught his meaning immediately. 3 times a week would give me more freedom to plan my next move. "That sounds perfect," I said, forcing a smile. "Zane, honey, could you get me some water?" As soon as Zane left the room, Dr. Lin pressed a card into my hand. "An excellent lawyer," he whispered. "Call her." That evening, I watched Zane cooking dinner in our kitchen, my kitchen, humming to himself like he hadn't spent the afternoon plotting to steal my inheritance. The engagement ring felt like it was burning my finger. My phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "Lawyer appointment set for tomorrow. Time to show these thieves what happens when they mess with the wrong family." Fire. I smiled, thinking of my father's foresight, my mother's strength. The Holloways thought they were dealing with a grieving, helpless girl. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Let them keep playing their game. I was done being the pawn. The lawyer's office felt too small for my wheelchair and the weight of what I'd learned. Miss Chen, the attorney Dr. Lin recommended, reviewed the hidden camera footage with sharp eyes. "They've been selling items through various online accounts," she said, sliding printouts across her desk. "We've traced most of the transactions. Your father's pen collection alone went for thousands." I stared at the papers, recognizing photos of my family's treasures listed on auction sites. "Can we get them back?" "Some. But that's not what concerns me most." She pulled out another document. "Someone attempted to access your parents' safety deposit box yesterday. The signature on the request form matches Zane's." My hands clenched around my armrests. What else were they trying to take? Later that afternoon, during my physical therapy session, Dr. Lin noticed my distraction. "Your body won't heal if your mind is in chaos," he said, helping me with my exercises. "I found my mother's old art supplies in the attic," I replied, changing the subject. "She used to paint landscapes." His eyes lit up. "Perhaps you should try it. Art can be incredibly therapeutic." That evening, I set up an easel in my bedroom, away from Zane's prying eyes. The blank canvas stared back at me like a challenge. As I picked up the brush, my phone buzzed with a text from Loretta, "Coming over tomorrow with wedding planners. Time to start making decisions." 2 hearts. The brush in my hand trembled. Then, almost of its own accord, it dipped into the dark red paint. I started painting, not landscapes like my mother, but something else entirely. Something that looked like flames. Hours passed. I barely noticed Zane checking on me, his expression unreadable as he watched me work. The painting took shape, a house burning, but with flowers blooming from the ashes. My house. My legacy. "That's intense," Lila said when she arrived the next morning, studying the finished piece. "You're planning something, aren't you?" Before I could answer, voices drifted up from downstairs. Loretta had arrived early with the wedding planners. "We'll need to clear out all this old furniture," Loretta was saying. "Start fresh. New beginnings and all that." I wheeled to the top of the ramp, Lila behind me. Loretta stood in my living room with 2 elegant women in business suits, gesturing at my mother's antique furniture like it was yard sale junk. "Actually," I said, making them all jump, "I've been doing some thinking about new beginnings." Loretta's smile flickered. "Wonderful, dear. These ladies have the most amazing ideas for transforming this old place." I meant about the wedding. I touched the engagement ring, which now felt like a brand. "And the house. And everything else you've been stealing." The wedding planners exchanged uncomfortable glances as Loretta's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Zane, could you come here, please?" "He's out," I said, watching her composure crack. "Probably trying to access my parents' safety deposit box again." "How much do you think that's worth, Loretta?" "More than my father's pens." "You ungrateful little," she caught herself, noticing the wedding planners' shocked expressions. "Ladies, could you give us a moment?" They practically fled, leaving Loretta glaring at me with undisguised hatred. "Everything we've done has been for your own good. You're in no condition to manage this house, this wealth." "You mean you're in no condition to keep pretending you're not drowning in debt?" I rolled closer, enjoying how she stepped back, Yes, I know about that too. The failed investments, the second mortgage, all of it. Her face contorted. You have no idea what it's like to watch everything slip away. To need. To need what? To steal from a grieving, paralyzed woman. I gestured to my painting, propped against the wall. Look closely, Loretta. That's what's coming. I'm going to burn your whole plan to the ground. She fled, leaving the front door open behind her. Lila whistled low. Damn, that was just the beginning. I finished, reeling back to my easel. I had another painting in mind, this one of a spider caught in its own web. Tomorrow, Zane would come home to find the engagement ring on his pillow. But first, I had some calls to make. Starting with the police. The police arrived just as Zane's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from my studio window as he stepped out, confusion crossing his face at the sight of the patrol cars. Behind him, his parents' Mercedes screeched to a halt. Loretta must have called them. Miss Winslow, Detective Martinez appeared in my doorway. We're ready when you are. I wheeled myself downstairs, Lila following close behind. The living room had become a staging ground, with officers documenting the empty spaces where family heirlooms once stood. Zane stood frozen in the center of it all, his perfect facade finally cracking. Al, what's going on? His voice wavered. Why are the police here? Show them, I said to Detective Martinez, who nodded to another officer. The laptop screen flickered to life, projecting the hidden camera footage onto the wall. Zane's face drained of color as his own voice filled the room. The insurance money's nearly cleared. She trusts me. Once we're married. Loretta burst through the door, Clyde right behind her. This is ridiculous. We were helping her. By selling my father's antique pen collection? I cut in, pulling up the online auction receipts. By trying to access my parents' safety deposit box? That's an interesting definition of help. You don't understand. Zane stepped toward me, but stopped when Lila moved protectively closer. We were going to pay it all back. After the wedding, once everything was settled. You mean once you had control of my inheritance? The words tasted bitter. Once you'd finished stripping away everything my parents worked for? Your parents. Loretta's laugh was sharp. Your precious parents had no idea what it's like to struggle. To watch everything you've built crumble while keeping up appearances. Mother, stop, Zane warned, but she was too far gone. We deserved this. After everything we've sacrificed, everything we've endured, she grabbed my mother's vase from the mantel. The last piece they hadn't managed to sell. This single piece is worth more than your father made in a year. Mrs. Holloway, Detective Martinez stepped forward. Please put down the vase. Instead, she hurled it at the wall above my head. I flinched as porcelain shards rained down, one cutting my cheek. The room erupted into chaos. Officers moved in. Clyde finally spoke up to defend his wife and Zane. Zane just stood there, looking lost between his family and me. Elle, please, he finally said, his voice breaking. I do love you. That part wasn't a lie. No, I touched my bleeding cheek. The lie was thinking I was too broken to fight back. As the officers led the Holloways out, reading them their rights, I felt strangely empty. This was my victory, wasn't it? So why did it feel like I'd lost something too? Later that night, after the police had gone and Lila had reluctantly left, I sat alone in my parents' room. The engagement ring sat heavy in my palm, catching the moonlight like tears. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. A photo appeared, my mother's locket, the one I'd taken back from Loretta, lying smashed on concrete. Below it, words that made my blood freeze. You think this is over? You have no idea what else we took from your parents that night. The implication hit me like a physical blow. The accident that killed my parents and left me paralyzed. Had it really been an accident? I stared at my reflection in the window, at the cut on my cheek still slowly bleeding. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one who'd woken up in that hospital room. She was harder now, colder. But maybe that's what I needed to be to uncover the whole truth. I wheeled to my easel and started a new painting. Not of flames this time, but of shattered glass and hidden shadows. Because this wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time, I wasn't fighting just for my inheritance. I was fighting for justice. Detective Martinez called me at dawn. They'd found something in Clyde's office. documents about my parents' accident. I knew where I needed to go. The county jail's visiting room was cold and sterile. Zane sat across from me, still wearing his designer clothes, though they looked rumpled now. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I didn't expect to see you," he said quietly. I placed the documents on the table between us. "Tell me about the brake lines." His face went pale. Don't." My voice was steady, surprising even me. "Just tell me the truth." For once. He stared at the papers, his hands trembling slightly. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Dad just wanted to delay them from getting to the lawyer's office. Scare them a little. The room seemed to tilt. Scare them? They were going to change their will. Dad found out through his connections at the bank. Zane's voice cracked. Mom was desperate. The bankruptcy papers were already filed. When she found out your parents were worth millions. So you tampered with their car. The words felt like glass in my throat. Dad did. I knew about it afterward. But by then you were in the hospital and I thought. He reached for my hand. I jerked away. You thought what? That marrying me would make up for killing my parents. I do love you all. That part was real. His eyes filled with tears. When I saw you in that hospital bed, I wanted to protect you. Protect me. I laughed, harsh and cold. By stealing everything they left me? By letting your mother wear my dead mother's jewelry. You don't understand what it's like to lose everything. He slammed his hand on the table. A guard stepped forward, but I waved them back. Actually, I do. Thanks to your family, I lost my parents, my ability to walk, and my trust and love, all in one night. I pulled out my phone, showing him the text message about my mother's locket. Was this you or your mother? His face changed, confusion replacing guilt. What text? I've been in here since the arrest. A chill ran down my spine. If not Zane or his parents, then who? There's something else you should know, he said, leaning forward. Dad wasn't working alone. Someone at the bank helped him access your parents' information. Someone who's still out there. The pieces started falling into place. The mysterious text, the broken locket, the timing of everything. Who? I demanded. I don't know their name. But Dad said they had a grudge against your father from years ago. Something about a failed business deal. A guard announced visiting time was over. As they led Zane away, he turned back. I'm sorry. For everything. I know it doesn't help, but... You're right, I cut him off. It doesn't help. Outside, Lila was waiting in her car. One look at my face and she knew something was wrong. There's more to this than we thought, I said, showing her the documents. Someone else was involved. Someone who might still be after me. Then we'll find them, she said firmly. Together. I touched the scar on my cheek from Loretta's throne base, thinking about my latest painting, the one of shattered glass and shadows. I'd left space in the corner unfinished, as if waiting for something. Now I knew what belonged there. Truth, emerging from darkness. My phone buzzed again, another anonymous text. Your father should have listened all those years ago. Now you'll pay for his mistakes. I showed it to Lila, who swore under her breath. What are you going to do? I thought about my parents, about justice and revenge, about the fine line between the two. I'm going to finish my painting, I said. And then I'm going to find out who's really behind all of this. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about exposing the truth, no matter how deep it's buried. And I was just getting started. 6 months after the Holloway's arrest, I sat in my studio, surrounded by paintings that told the story of my transformation. The morning light streamed through windows no longer shadowed by doubt and deception. Detective Martinez had called yesterday with news. They'd identified the bank insider who helped orchestrate my parents' accident. My father's former business partner, driven by a decades-old grudge, had finally been arrested. The last piece of the puzzle, falling into place. But revenge, I'd learned, wasn't the bomb I'd expected it to be. I wheeled myself to my latest canvas, a work in progress showing a wheelchair transformed into wings. Dr. Lin had suggested art therapy months ago, but it had become more than therapy. It had become my voice, my freedom. Ready for your first gallery showing? Lila appeared in the doorway, carrying coffee and her characteristic optimism. The space downtown is perfect. Almost. I gestured to the stack of recovered family items in the corner. Dad's pens, Mom's books, pieces of our history slowly coming home. I found something else this morning. I handed her a sealed envelope, discovered behind my mother's restored jewelry box. My name was written in her elegant handwriting. Have you opened it? Lila asked softly. Not yet. I took a deep breath. Would you? She carefully broke the seal and began reading. My dearest Elle, if you're reading this, something has happened to me and your father. Know that we saw your strength long before you needed to prove it to anyone else. My mother's words filled the studio, her voice somehow present in every syllable. She wrote about love, about resilience, about the difference between justice and vengeance. And then, your father and I always knew someone might come after our success, our legacy. But our real legacy isn't in the house or the possessions. It's in you, in your spirit that refuses to break, in your heart that knows how to love despite loss. Lila's voice cracked as she read the final lines. Don't let anger define you, sweetheart. Let it refine you. We sat in silence, letting the words settle around us like autumn leaves. She knew, I finally said. They both knew something might happen. And they made sure you were protected, Lila added, touching the legal documents that had saved my inheritance. I wheeled to the window, looking out at the garden I'd started replanting. I spent so long wanting revenge. I almost forgot about living. The doorbell rang, Dr. Lin arriving for my final physical therapy assessment. He'd been right about so many things, especially about finding strength in unexpected places. Your latest work, he said, studying the wheelchair wings painting. It's different. Hopeful. I'm different, I replied, thinking of my mother's words. I thought getting justice would feel like winning. But the real victory was in refusing to let them break me. Later that evening, alone in my studio, I picked up my brushes one last time. On the wings painting, I added something new, a small locket, broken but mending, its pieces held together by golden light. My phone buzzed, a message from the prison. Zane wanted to see me one last time before his transfer. I deleted it without responding. Some chapters needed to stay closed. Instead, I opened my laptop and typed, Dear Mom and Dad, today I finally understood what you meant about legacy. The house creaked softly around me, no longer haunted by what was stolen, but filled with what remained, strength, memory. Love transformed by fire, but not consumed by it. Outside, the garden waited for tomorrow's light. I'd planted roses where Mom's used to grow, but added wildflowers too, something new among the familiar. Like me, the garden was both memory and possibility, roots and wings. My story wasn't ending. It was evolving, like paint changing color as it dried, revealing deeper shades beneath the surface. And I was ready for whatever canvas came next. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in creating something beautiful from the ashes. That's what my parents would have wanted. That's what I wanted too. The call came while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office. My assistant Miranda's voice trembled when she patched it through. Larkin, it's the police department. They say it's urgent. My name is Larkin, and that call shattered my carefully structured world into a million jagged pieces. Miss Delaney? The officer's voice was gentle but firm. I'm sorry to inform you that your father, Robert Delaney, was involved in a serious accident this morning on Route 27. The pen I'd been holding clattered to my desk. Is he? I couldn't finish the sentence. I'm very sorry. He didn't survive the impact. The world tilted sideways. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who showed me how to read financial statements when I was 12, who still called me princess, even though I was 32, was gone. Just like that. I don't remember ending the call or walking out of my office. The next thing I knew, my husband Nolan was rushing through the lobby of Delaney Industries, his usually perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled. He wrapped his arms around me, and I buried my face in his shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne. I left as soon as Miranda called, he whispered. What do you need? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was my father's attorney, Marcus. Larkin, I just heard. I know this is terrible timing, but there are some immediate matters we need to discuss regarding the company. I pulled away from Nolan, wiping my eyes. Now. The board is already calling. Your father was, well, he was the heart of this company. People are scared. Nolan squeezed my hand. You don't have to do this right now. But I did. Dad had built this company from nothing, pouring 30 years of his life into it. I couldn't let it falter, not even for a day of grief. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I told Marcus. Nolan's face darkened slightly. Let me come with you. You shouldn't be alone. I hesitated. Nolan had always been supportive of my career, but lately, I'd noticed a tension whenever the company came up. Maybe it was the stark contrast between his teacher's salary and my executive position. Or maybe it was his mother Vera's constant hints about family businesses belonging to the whole family. I think I need to handle this part alone, I said gently. He stepped back, jaw tightening. Of course. I'll go tell Mom and Sage the news. They'll want to help with arrangements. The way he said it made my skin prickle. My father had never quite warmed to Vera and Sage, though he'd been unfailingly polite. Something about them made him uneasy, though he never said why. In Marcus's office, surrounded by leather-bound law books and the faint smell of coffee, I learned that Dad had left me controlling interest in the company. The news shouldn't have surprised me. I'd been working alongside him for years, learning every aspect of the business. But somehow, it felt overwhelming. There's something else, Marcus said, sliding an envelope across his desk. Your father left this for you. He updated his will last month and insisted this be given to you after. I stared at the envelope, my name written in Dad's familiar scrawl. I couldn't bring myself to open it yet. My phone buzzed again, Nolan letting me know his family was gathering at our house. Mom's making calls, his text read. She says we need to discuss the future. The future. Such a simple word for such a complicated mess. I tucked the letter into my bag, thanked Marcus, and headed home. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's death wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. I just didn't know yet how right I was. 3 days after Dad's funeral, I hosted a family dinner. It wasn't my idea. Vera insisted we needed to come together as family during this difficult time. I was still numb, moving through the motions of grief while trying to keep the company stable, but I couldn't refuse without seeming ungrateful. The tension started before the first course was even served. I was in the kitchen, plating the appetizers, when I overheard Vera's voice drift in from the dining room. It's such a shame Robert didn't have a son, she was saying. A family business needs a strong male presence. Not that Larkin isn't capable, of course, but… Mom. Nolan cut in, but his protest sounded weak. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. My best friend Marin, who'd come early to help, squeezed my shoulder. Don't let her get to you, she whispered. That's exactly what she wants. I forced a smile and carried the plates out. Sage, Nolan's sister, was sprawled in my father's chair, his favorite spot at the head of the table. She didn't move when I entered. Something smells amazing, Sage chirped, scrolling through her phone. Though I hope it's not too heavy. I'm trying this new diet. You could move, I suggested quietly, nodding at Dad's chair. Sage blinked up at me, all innocence. Oh, is this spot special? It was Dad's chair, Nolan explained, finally speaking up. Maybe you could. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Sage jumped up, but her expression didn't match her words. I'm just so comfortable here. It feels right, doesn't it? Like family? The room went quiet. I set down the plates with careful precision, fighting to keep my composure. Vera cleared her throat. Speaking of family, she began, Nolan and I were discussing the company earlier. You know, he has excellent management experience from running the science department at his school. It's not quite the same thing, I said carefully. But family is family, Vera pressed. And now that you're in charge, surely you'll want trusted people around you? People who share your values. I caught Nolan's eye across the table. He looked away. The company has a strong management team, I replied. Dad built it carefully over decades. Yes, but times change. Vera smiled, all teeth. Fresh blood, new perspectives. And Sage has her business degree. From an online college. Marin muttered under her breath. Sage shot her a glare. I heard that. Ladies, Nolan interrupted. Maybe we could talk about something else? Larkin's still grieving. Of course, of course. Vera patted my hand. We just want to help, dear. Your father would have wanted the company to benefit the whole family. I pulled my hand away, standing abruptly. I need to check on the main course. In the kitchen, I braced myself against the sink, breathing deeply.
Marin followed me in.
They're vultures, she said flatly. You see that, right? They're my family now, I replied, but the words felt hollow. No, they're Nolan's family. And where was he when Vera was basically calling you incompetent? Or when Sage was deliberately provoking you? I didn't answer. Through the kitchen door, I could hear Vera's voice again, lower now. She's overwhelmed, poor thing. She'll need guidance. Strong guidance. Mom, please, Nolan's voice, still weak, still unwilling to take a real stand. I reached into my pocket, touching Dad's unopened letter. I hadn't been able to read it yet, it felt too final. But standing there, listening to them plot and plan in my own home, I realized I couldn't put it off much longer. The main course is going to burn, I said finally. Screw the main course, Marin replied. What are you going to do about them? I straightened my shoulders, remembering how Dad used to say that respect had to be earned, not demanded. First, we're going to serve dinner. Then tomorrow, I'm going to show them exactly what kind of leader I can be. But as I carried out the main course, I caught Nolan watching me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between worry and calculation. And I wondered if I really knew my husband at all. The email from James Chun, one of our longest-serving board members, hit me like a punch to the gut. I read it 3 times in my office, each time hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. Larkin, I feel obligated to inform you about a concerning conversation with Vera Price. She suggested that without proper family oversight of the company's operations, she might need to pursue legal options regarding your father's estate. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the rest of the message. James had attached screenshots of emails, dozens of them. Vera had been reaching out to board members for weeks, even before Dad's funeral, pushing for positions for both Nolan and Sage. My phone buzzed. Marin, have you checked your email? You knew about this? I just heard from Rita in HR. Vera's been calling department heads too, asking about potential restructuring. She's building a case that you're too inexperienced to run things alone. I closed my eyes, remembering the dinner 2 nights ago. All those subtle hints and careful comments, they weren't just idle talk. They were laying groundwork. Where's Nolan? Marin asked. Parent-teacher conferences. I checked the time. He should be home soon. Don't confront him alone. I can come over. I need to handle this myself. I heard his key in the door just after 7. He looked tired, his tie loosened, carrying a stack of papers. For a moment, I almost wavered. This was my husband, the man who'd held me through Mom's death, who brought me coffee every morning, who— Your mother's been contacting the board, I said without preamble. He set down his papers slowly. Larkin. Did you know? His hesitation was answer enough. She's trying to help, he said finally. We all are. You're under so much pressure. By threatening legal action? By undermining me to my own board. That's not. She wouldn't actually sue. She's just worried about the family's future. Our future. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the emails. Read them. He did, his face growing paler. This is just Mom being Mom. You know how she gets. No, this is your mother trying to force her way into my father's company. And you knew. You've known all along. What was I supposed to do? His voice cracked. She's my mother. And she's right, I should be doing more. I'm your husband, but I'm just a teacher while you're running this huge company. So this is about your ego? This is about family. He slammed his hand on the counter, making me jump. Your father's gone, Larkin. The company needs strong leadership. And you think that's you? Or Sage, with her online degree and 0 work experience? At least we're thinking about the whole family's needs. You're so caught up in your father's legacy. Because it matters. I was shouting now too. Because he built something real, something that matters to hundreds of employees and their families. And your mother wants to treat it like a personal ATM. That's not fair. Then explain it to me, Nolan. Explain why your mother is threatening legal action against her daughter-in-law less than 2 weeks after my father died. He couldn't meet my eyes. She's just trying to secure our future. In that moment, something shifted between us. Maybe it was the way he said our, like he and his family were one unit, and I was something else entirely. I need you to leave, I said quietly.
What?
Pack a bag. Go to your mother's. I need time to think. Larkin, don't do this. Either you leave now, or I call Marin and have her come help me pack my things instead. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked upstairs without another word. I listened to him moving around, packing, fighting the urge to run up and tell him to stay, to fix this. But Dad's voice echoed in my head, "Trust your gut, princess. When something feels wrong in business or in life, it usually is." I pulled out his letter, still unopened. Whatever guidance he'd left me, whatever wisdom he'd wanted to share, I was ready to hear it now. Because this wasn't just about the company anymore. This was war. After Nolan left, I finally opened Dad's letter. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper, his familiar handwriting swimming before my eyes. "My dearest Larkin, if you're reading this, I need you to check something for me. In the office safe, behind the Delaney Industries Incorporation papers, there's a blue folder." I was in my car before finishing the letter. The office was dark and empty when I arrived, but I knew every inch of this building. Dad's office still smelled like his aftershave. The safe clicked open. Behind the incorporation papers, just as he'd said, was a worn blue folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and a private investigator's report dated 3 months ago. My phone rang, making me jump. "Marin, where are you? I went by your house, but..." Dad knew. I cut her off, my voice hollow. He knew something was wrong. He hired someone to investigate the prices. Silence on the line. Then, what did he find? I spread the papers across Dad's desk. Vera's broke. She remortgaged her house twice. Sage has maxed out credit cards in 3 different names. And Nolan. My throat tightened. Nolan's been meeting with corporate lawyers since last year. What kind of lawyers? The kind that specialize in shareholder disputes and inheritance claims. The office door creaked. I spun around to find James Chen standing there, looking grave. "I thought I might find you here," he said quietly. "There's something else you need to know." I put the phone on speaker as James sat down. He looked older than he had at the board meeting last week. "Your father came to me about his suspicions," James began. He was planning to update the company bylaws, add provisions to protect against hostile takeovers from within the family. "But he didn't get the chance," I whispered. "The accident." Marin's voice crackled through the speaker. "Larkin, you don't think..." "The police report's in here too," I said, holding up a paper with shaking hands. Dad's brake lines were damaged. They ruled it inconclusive. But James leaned forward. "The day before the accident, your father told me he was going to confront Nolan directly. He said he had proof that the prices were planning something." My world tilted sideways. The photographs scattered across the desk seemed to mock me. Nolan leaving law offices, Vera meeting with board members in secret. Sage's shopping sprees with money she didn't have. "I should have seen it," I said. "All those times Vera pushed for family unity when Nolan insisted on joining board meetings." "You saw what they wanted you to see," Marin said firmly. "What matters is what you do now." My phone buzzed with a text. "Nolan, Mom wants to meet tomorrow. To talk things through as a family. Please, Larkin, give us a chance to explain." I stared at the message, remembering all the little moments, how Nolan always seemed to know about board decisions before I told him. How Vera had started calling my father's old friends months ago, how Sage had casually mentioned moving closer to the office. "They're planning something," I said. "This meeting tomorrow, it's a trap." "Then set one of your own," Marin replied. James nodded slowly. Your father left you everything for a reason, Larkin. He trusted you to protect his legacy. I looked around the office. At Dad's degrees on the wall, the photo of him teaching me to ride a bike, the empire he'd built from nothing. Then I looked down at the evidence he'd gathered, his final gift to me. Tell Nolan I'll meet them, I said, already formulating a plan. But not tomorrow. I need time to prepare. Prepare what? Marin asked. I gathered the papers, tucking them safely away. Dad taught me that in business, like in chess, you have to think 3 moves ahead. They want to play games?
Fine.
But they're about to learn they're not the only ones who can set a trap. As I locked the office door, I swore I could smell Dad's aftershave again, stronger this time. Like he was right there with me, watching, waiting to see what I would do next. I chose the conference room overlooking the city for our meeting. Dad always said the view reminded him of how far we'd come, from a tiny startup to the gleaming skyscraper we now occupied. It seemed fitting for what I was about to do. Vera arrived first, perfectly coiffed, and wearing what looked like a new designer suit. Sage trailed behind her, scrolling through her phone. Nolan came last, his tie slightly crooked, a detail I would have fixed just days ago. Darling, Vera started, reaching for my hands. We're so glad you're ready to talk. I stepped back. Please sit down. James Chun and our corporate counsel, Sarah Martinez, entered silently, taking seats at the far end of the table. Vera's smile flickered. I wasn't aware this was a formal meeting, she said carefully. Neither was I, Nolan added, frowning at the lawyers. I opened the blue folder in front of me. Let's talk about Dad's accident. The room went still. Sage finally looked up from her phone. The brake lines were damaged. I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Interesting timing, considering he was planning to change the company bylaws the next day. What are you implying? Vera's voice had lost its warmth. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I spread out the bank statements, the photographs, the investigators' reports. Like the fact that you're nearly bankrupt. Or that Nolan's been meeting with corporate lawyers specializing in hostile takeovers. Those meetings were about school funding, Nolan protested, but his face had gone pale. Really? Because I have recordings. I pressed play on my phone, and Nolan's voice filled the room. Once we secure board positions, we can start restructuring. My wife won't see it coming. Sage stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't. Sit down. Vera snapped, her mask finally cracking. Larkin, dear, you're obviously struggling with grief. Seeing conspiracies where there's only family trying to help. Help yourselves, you mean? I pulled out more documents. Dad knew what you were planning. He was gathering evidence. And then, conveniently, he had an accident. You think we killed him? Nolan's voice cracked. Your own husband? I think you're capable of anything to get what you want. I turned to Sarah. Please explain their options. Sarah cleared her throat. Option 1. You sign these papers, agreeing to sever all ties with Delaney Industries. You'll receive a one-time settlement in exchange for waiving any future claims on the company or estate. Or, Vera's eyes had gone cold. Or we turn over all evidence of your financial fraud, corporate espionage, and the ongoing investigation into Robert Delaney's death to the authorities. You wouldn't dare, Sage whispered. We're family. Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family doesn't plot behind each other's backs. Family doesn't try to steal what others have built. And family certainly doesn't celebrate at a funeral. What are you talking about? Nolan asked. I pulled out one final photograph. Vera, Sage, and Nolan toasting with champagne in Vera's kitchen the night after Dad's funeral. Their smiles said everything. You have until tomorrow morning to decide, I said, standing. Choose carefully. You'll regret this, Vera hissed, her composure completely gone. You have no idea what we're capable of. Actually, I do. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Nolan? I've already filed for divorce. Consider yourself served. I walked out, leaving them with the lawyers and their choices. In the elevator, my hands finally started shaking. Marin was waiting in my office. How did it go? I looked out at the city Dad had loved so much. He always said the hardest part of business wasn't making money, it was knowing who to trust. And now I know exactly who to trust. I touched the window, remembering Dad's words about legacy and integrity, and who to destroy. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of red. It felt like an ending and a beginning all at once. Tomorrow would bring either their surrender or war. I was ready for either. The deadline came and went. No signatures. No surrender. Just silence, until my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Turn on the news. Channel 7 was running a special report about Delaney Industries. The headline made my blood run cold. Family fortune or family fraud? Questions arise about Robert Delaney's death. Vera's face filled the screen, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "We're devastated by these revelations," she sobbed. "To think that Robert's own daughter might have." The break lines. My phone exploded with notifications. Board members, employees, reporters, all wanting answers. Marin burst into my office. "They're saying you tampered with your father's car," she gasped. "That you couldn't wait to take control of the company." I couldn't breathe. On my desk, more headlines flashed across my laptop. Sources claim Larkin Delaney expressed frustration with father's leadership. Financial records show unusual transfers days before CEO's death. "They planted evidence," I whispered. "They're using everything I threatened them with, but twisting it around." My office door opened again. James' chin looked grim. "The board's calling an emergency meeting. They're voting on temporary suspension of leadership." "They can't do that. I have controlling interests. They're citing the emergency clause. Pending investigation into..." He couldn't finish. My phone buzzed. "Nolan, it didn't have to be this way. We can still fix this. Meet me at home. Just us." "Don't," Marin warned, reading over my shoulder. But I was already grabbing my keys. I had to know why, had to understand how the man I'd loved could do this. The drive home felt endless. Nolan was waiting in our kitchen. Our perfect kitchen where we'd hosted dinner parties and Sunday brunches, where he'd proposed on one knee 5 years ago. "You really think I kill my own father?" My voice cracked. "Of course not." He stepped closer. "But Mom, she's desperate. The money problems, Sage's debts. She saw an opportunity. And you just went along with it?" "I tried to be the bridge between our families. But you never saw me, Larkin. I was just the teacher, the trophy husband who couldn't measure up to the great Robert Delaney's daughter. So you decided to destroy me instead? We can still fix this."
He reached for my hand.
"Sign over 40% of the company. Mom will retract her statement. We'll say it was all a misunderstanding, grief making everyone crazy. We can even stay married, keep up appearances." I jerked away. "You really think I'd choose you over Dad's legacy?" "Choose carefully," he said softly. "Because if you don't, tomorrow's headline will be about how you're following in your mother's footsteps. How depression runs in families. How tragic it is when history repeats." The threat hit like a physical blow. Mom's suicide had been private, protected. Until now. You wouldn't. Mom would. And does it matter? Once it's out there, the damage is done. The board won't risk a mentally unstable CEO. Sign the papers, Larkin. It's over. My phone buzzed again, James, probably with news of the board's vote. I let it ring. "I'll have the papers drawn up," Nolan continued. "We can sign tomorrow. Start fresh." I looked around our kitchen, remembering all the lies that had been served here along with family dinners. Remembering Dad's words about trust and legacy. "Tomorrow," I echoed, already planning my next move. He smiled, thinking he'd won. "I'll tell Mom. She'll be relieved." I walked out without looking back, drove until I reached Dad's favorite spot, overlooking the city. The same view as my office, but somehow clearer now. My phone showed 57 missed calls. The news was still running Vera's tearful interview. Tomorrow, they'd drag Mom's memory through the mud. Unless... I pulled out Dad's letter again, reading past the part about the blue folder to something I'd missed before. Remember, princess, sometimes you have to lose everything to see what really matters. I finally understood what he meant, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. I arrived at the office before dawn, Dad's final instructions clear in my mind. By 8, every major financial network was carrying the story. Delaney Industries CEO calls emergency press conference. Vera and Nolan burst into my office just as I finished preparing. "What are you doing?" Nolan demanded. Exactly what Dad taught me to do. I straightened my jacket. "I'm telling the truth." The press conference room was packed. Cameras flashed as I took the podium, Vera and Nolan hovering at the back like vultures waiting for a kill. My father, Robert Delaney, built this company on 2 principles: integrity and transparency. My voice carried clear and strong. Today, I'm honoring both. I nodded to James, who started the video. On the massive screen behind me, security footage began to play. Footage from Dad's private office camera system that he never told anyone about, except in his letter to me. The room went silent as they watched Vera and Nolan in Dad's office the night before his death, arguing with him about the company's future. "You can't cut us out." Vera's voice rang through the speakers. "After everything we've done to position ourselves, I won't let you steal my daughter's birthright." Dad's voice, strong and clear. "I know about the debts, Vera. The schemes. It ends now." Nolan's face on the screen was twisted with rage. "You think you can just throw us away? We're family." "No," Dad replied. "You're parasites." The footage cut to later that night, Nolan in the parking garage under Dad's car. The timestamp clearly visible. Gasps filled the room. Reporters were frantically typing on their phones. At the back, Vera's face had gone chalk white. "The police have already received this footage," I continued, "along with evidence of extensive financial fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy." "You're destroying your own marriage," Nolan shouted from the back. "Everything we built." "We built nothing," I cut him off. "You plotted and schemed while I actually worked. The only thing you built was a web of lies." "Larkin, please." Vera stepped forward, tears already starting. "Think about what you're doing to our family." "Family?" I laughed, and the sound echoed through the silent room. "Let me show you what family really means." The screen changed again, this time showing years of secret recordings. Vera and Sage spending company money on luxury purchases. Nolan meeting with corporate raiders. The champagne toast after Dad's funeral. "My father knew what you were planning," I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "He left me everything I needed to expose you. But first he wanted me to see who you really were." "You'll regret this," Nolan snarled, starting forward. Security stepped between us. In the crowd, I could see police officers moving in. "No, Nolan. You'll regret it. You and your family wanted my company." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "Congratulations. You're about to become majority shareholders of your own prison sentences." The officers reached them as reporters shouted questions. Vera was crying for real now as handcuffs clicked into place. Sage, who'd just arrived, screamed as she was detained. Nolan locked eyes with me one last time as they led him away. "I did love you, you know." "No," I replied quietly. "You loved what I could give you. There's a difference." After they were gone, I addressed the press again. Delaney Industries will continue operating with full transparency. Our books are open, our practices ethical, and our commitment to integrity absolute, just as my father wanted. Hours later, after the statements and questions and legal proceedings, I sat alone in Dad's office. The sun was setting over the city he'd loved so much. "You were right, Dad," I whispered to the empty room. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to see what really matters." My phone buzzed, Marin, sending me headlines from the evening news. Delaney Industries stand strong. Corporate conspiracy exposed and justice served. CEO honors father's legacy. I smiled, touching Dad's nameplate on the desk. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, I had done what needed to be done. I had protected his legacy, not just the company, but the principles he lived by. And in doing so, I'd found my own. 1 year later, I stood in the same conference room where I'd exposed Nolan and his family, but everything felt different. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the faces of our employees as I announced the company's new profit-sharing program. My father believed that success should lift everyone. I told them. Today, we're making that belief concrete. After the applause died down and the room cleared, Marin lingered behind. Have you seen the news? I had. Nolan had taken a plea deal, testifying against Vera in exchange for a reduced sentence. Sage had avoided jail time, but was working retail to pay off her debts. And Vera, the mastermind, would spend the next decade behind bars. The house sold yesterday, I said, gathering my papers. Final tie cut. You okay? I considered the question as we walked to my office. The past year had been a blur of rebuilding, not just the company but myself. Every morning, I'd walked past the security footage still saved on my computer, reminding myself that sometimes the people closest to you can be the biggest threats. I visited Mom's grave last week, I said instead of answering. First time since everything happened. Told her about Dad's letter, about how he protected me even after he was gone. And I finally understood something. Mom's depression wasn't weakness, like Vera tried to paint it. She saw things in people that others missed. Maybe that's why she struggled so much. My phone buzzed, a text from James Chun. The board meeting would start soon. But first, I had something to do. Come with me? We took the elevator to the lobby, where a crew was installing new lettering on the wall. The company's mission statement, written in elegant gold. Integrity is not what we do, but who we are. Below it, smaller but just as bright, in memory of Robert Delaney, who taught us that true legacy lives in our actions. He would have loved this, Marin said softly. Yeah. I touched the letters gently. But that's not what I wanted to show you. I led her to my car, drove through the city until we reached a familiar neighborhood. Pulled up in front of a small house with a for sale sign in the yard. Your old house. Marin frowned. I thought you'd never want to see it again. I bought it yesterday. I got out of the car, walked up the familiar path. Not to live in. For this. I handed her a folder. Plans for converting the house into a shelter for women escaping financial abuse. A place where they could learn business skills, rebuild their lives, find their strength. Dad protected me with evidence and security cameras, I explained. But not everyone has that. Some people just need a chance to stand on their own feet. Using your revenge to help others, Marin smiled. Your dad would be proud. It's not about revenge anymore. I looked at the house where I'd once thought I was building a future with Nolan. It's about making something better from something broken. My phone buzzed again. Time for the board meeting. As we drove back, I thought about Dad's final letter, now framed in my office. About how he'd known I'd face hard choices, but trusted me to make the right ones. You know what's funny? I said as we pulled into the parking garage, a different spot than where Dad had parked that last day. Nolan and Vera thought Dad's legacy was the company, but it wasn't. No. It was learning how to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. I smiled, thinking of the shelter plans, of the profit-sharing program, of all the changes ahead, and then building something better from the ashes. We stepped into the elevator, heading up to face whatever challenges waited next. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I knew exactly who I was and what I stood for. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something they can never touch, never corrupt, never understand. Something that lasts.
I never meant to snoop through my husband's things. But when the perfumed envelope fell from his jacket pocket as I was doing laundry, something in my gut told me this wasn't just another business card. My name is June, and until that moment, I thought I had the perfect marriage. Virgil and I had been together for 6 years, building what I believed was an unshakable foundation of trust and mutual respect. But there I stood in our laundry room, holding a pale pink envelope that smelled like jasmine and regret. "Honey, have you seen my gray jacket?" Virgil called from upstairs. "I need it for the meeting tomorrow." My hands trembled as I stuffed the envelope into my pocket. "Just putting it in the wash now," I replied, proud of how steady my voice sounded. Later that night, after Virgil had fallen asleep, I sat in our ensuite bathroom, perched on the edge of the tub with the letter in my hands. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, nothing like the chicken scratch from his business associates. "Dear V," it began. "I know it's been years, but I can't stop thinking about what you said at the charity gala last month. About regretting your choices. About us." My stomach churned. Last month's gala? The one where Virgil had claimed he'd spent the entire evening networking with potential investors? The letter continued, each word feeling like a needle under my skin. "Your mother always said we were perfect together. Maybe she was right. Maybe it's not too late." A soft knock at the bathroom door made me jump. "June? Everything okay in there?" Virgil's voice was thick with sleep. I quickly folded the letter and tucked it into my robe pocket. "Just feeling a bit queasy," I lied. "Must have been the takeout. Do you need anything?" The concern in his voice made this all worse somehow. How could he sound so caring while harboring such secrets? "No, I'm fine. Go back to sleep." As I heard his footsteps retreat and the bed creak, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow, harder, more suspicious. In that moment, I realized our marriage wasn't what needed fixing, it was beyond repair. What I needed was a plan. The next morning, over coffee, Virgil kissed my forehead like nothing was wrong. "Mother's coming for dinner tonight," he reminded me. "She's been asking about grandchildren again." I forced a smile, thinking about his mother, Eudora, and her constant pressure about babies. Now her words in the letter made sense. Perfect together, she'd always preferred his ex. The realization hit me like a slap. "Actually," I said, stirring my coffee slowly, "I'm not feeling well enough for company. Maybe we should reschedule." Virgil's face darkened slightly. "Mother's already on her way. She's been planning this dinner all week." "Of course she has," I muttered. "What's that supposed to mean?" I met his eyes across the kitchen island. "Nothing. I just find it interesting how your mother always gets what she wants." He set his coffee cup down harder than necessary. "June, what's going on with you?" "You tell me, V," I said, emphasizing his nickname from the letter. "Anything you want to share about last month's gala?" Color drained from his face, but before he could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister Mari. "Emergency at work. Need you ASAP." I grabbed my purse, grateful for the escape. "I have to go. Tell your mother I'm sorry about dinner." As I walked to my car, I could feel Virgil watching from the window. 6 years of marriage, and it took one letter to make me question everything. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was knowing this was just the beginning. Mari's emergency turned out to be exactly what I needed, an excuse to avoid the inevitable confrontation with Virgil and his mother. My sister's coffee shop was quiet when I arrived, just a few regulars scattered among the mismatched furniture. "You look like hell," Mari said, sliding a steaming mug across the counter. "Spale." I pulled the letter from my purse, now wrinkled from my constant handling. Mari read it silently, her expression darkening with each line. "That lying piece of—" "It gets worse," I cut her off. "Remember that charity gala last month? The one where Virgil was supposedly networking all night? The one where Eudora kept parading that skinny blonde around?" Mari's eyes widened. "Wait, was that his ex?" "Probably." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, trying to stop them from shaking. "And apparently, Mother Dearest still thinks they're perfect for each other." The bell above the door chimed. Speaking of the devil, Eudora Ashford swept in like she owned the place, her designer handbag swinging from her arm. Mari muttered something under her breath and disappeared into the back room. "Juniper, darling," Eudora's voice dripped with false sweetness. "I thought you were ill?" "Just needed some fresh air." I straightened my spine, meeting her calculating gaze. And my sister's coffee. She settled onto the stool next to me, uninvited. Well, since we're both here, we might as well discuss the elephant in the room. The charity gala? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Something flickered across her face. Surprise? Concern? But it was gone in an instant. I meant children, dear. Virgil isn't getting any younger, and the Ashford name needs to be carried on. Maybe you should talk to the blonde from the gala about that. I immediately regretted the comment, but Eudora's perfectly composed mask cracked slightly. Catherine was always more amenable to family obligations. She examined her manicured nails. Such a shame things didn't work out between them. But then, timing is everything, isn't it? The implications of her words hit me like a physical blow. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Virgil. Where are you? We need to talk. Trouble in paradise? Eudora's smile didn't reach her eyes. Nothing I can't handle. I stood up, gathering my things. Give my apologies to Virgil for dinner. I'm sure Catherine would be happy to take my place. Mari emerged from the back just as I reached the door. June, wait. But I was already outside, gulping in the cool air. My phone buzzed again. Please come home. I can explain everything. I drove aimlessly for hours, eventually ending up at the park where Virgil had proposed. The memory felt tainted now, like everything else. As I sat on our favorite bench, another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Hi June, it's Catherine. We should talk. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend this wasn't happening. But a stronger part, the part that had been silently gathering evidence and connecting dots, knew this conversation was inevitable. Starbucks on 5th. 30 minutes, I replied. When I walked into the coffee shop, Catherine was already there. She looked exactly like she had at the gala, perfectly polished, exactly Eudora's type of daughter-in-law. But up close, I could see the cracks in her facade too. I'm sorry about the letter, she said as I sat down. I never meant for you to find it. But you meant to write it? She fidgeted with her coffee cup. Eudora said, she said things weren't working out between you and Virgil. She said he was miserable. Course she did. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. And you believed her? I believed what I wanted to believe. Catherine met my eyes. But after the gala, after seeing you two together, I realized Eudora wasn't telling the whole truth. She never does. I stood up, suddenly clear about what I needed to do. Thank you for being honest. That's more than I can say for my husband. As I drove home, I thought about timing, how Eudora had mentioned it, how it really was everything. And right now, it was time to make some changes. Big ones. When I finally returned home that evening, our house was dark except for Virgil's study. Through the window, I could see him hunched over his desk, phone pressed to his ear. I used my key as quietly as possible, but he must have heard me because the conversation stopped abruptly. I have to go, he said in a hushed tone. No, not now. I'll call you later. I stood in the doorway of his study, watching him scramble to close browser tabs. Don't stop on my account, I said. I'm sure Catherine's waiting for your call. His face went through a series of emotions, surprise, guilt, anger, before settling on something like resignation. It's not what you think. Really? Because I just had an interesting chat with her. I moved closer to his desk, noticing how he subtly angled his computer screen away from me. She told me about Eudora's meddling. What I can't figure out is why you went along with it. June, please, he reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Don't. My voice cracked slightly. Just don't. That's when I noticed the browser tab he'd missed. An email draft to Catherine with an attachment, divorce papers. My stomach lurched. Were you even going to tell me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Or was I supposed to find out from your mother like everything else? Virgil ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. I was trying to protect you. Protect me. I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. By secretly planning our divorce with your ex? The company's failing June. I'm drowning in debt. His voice rose with each word. Mother offered to help, but only if you left me for Catherine. Pieces finally clicked into place. Because she comes from money and I'm just a financial analyst from the wrong side of town. That's not fair. Fair. I moved to his desk, turning his computer screen toward me. The email draft was still open, dated 3 weeks ago. You've been planning this for weeks while I've been trying to figure out what I did wrong. His phone buzzed again, Eudora's name flashing on the screen. Of course. Answer it, I said, already heading for the door. Tell your mother her plan worked. The common girl is finally out of the picture. June, wait. He grabbed my arm. Where are you going? I jerked away from him. To pack. And then I'm calling my lawyer. I'm sure he'll be very interested in these emails, especially the parts about hiding assets before filing for divorce. Color drained from his face. You wouldn't. The funny thing about being a financial analyst, Virgil? I smiled, though it felt more like baring my teeth. I notice when money moves in strange ways. Like large transfers to offshore accounts right after your mother's visits. His phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. As he glanced at it, I saw another notification pop up. A message from Catherine about meeting tomorrow to finalize everything. You know what hurts the most? I asked, pausing at the door. I actually believed you loved me more than your mother's money. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard him calling after me, his voice desperate. What about children? Mother says. Your mother can go to hell. I turned to face him one last time. And so can you. In our bedroom, I grabbed my emergency bag, the one I'd packed last week when I first found the letter. As I headed for the front door, Virgil's phone rang again. This time, he answered. Mother, now isn't a good time. No, I haven't told her everything yet. Yes, I know the papers need to be filed by Friday. I closed the door on his conversation, cutting off whatever scheme Eudora was cooking up next. In my car, I found a text from Mari. Guest room's ready whenever you need it. My hands shook as I started the engine, but my mind was clear. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But they were about to learn that this common girl knew how to play too. And I played to win. Mari's guest room became my war room. Spread across the bed were financial statements, bank records, and emails I'd secretly forwarded from Virgil's computer before leaving. 3 days had passed, and my phone was a battlefield of missed calls and manipulative texts from both Virgil and Eudora. You need to see this, Mari said, bursting into the room with her laptop. She turned it toward me, showing a local business news website. The headline made my coffee go cold. Ashford Industries announces merger with Sterling Corporation. Sterling Corporation, Catherine's family business. That son of I started, but my phone buzzed with an unknown number. June. A woman's voice, unfamiliar. This is Felicity. I worked in accounting at Ashford Industries until last month. I put her on speaker. Go on. I've been trying to reach you since I heard about the divorce plans. She lowered her voice. There are things you need to know about the company's finances. Things that aren't in the official records. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can we meet? An hour later, I sat across from Felicity in a quiet corner of a diner outside town. She slid a USB drive across the table. I kept copies of everything, she said, glancing nervously at the door. The real books, the offshore accounts, the backdated contracts. Eudora's been cooking the books for years, but this merger... She shook her head. It's not just about getting you out of the picture. They're trying to hide something bigger. Why are you helping me? Because they did the same thing to me. Her smile was bitter. I was engaged to Virgil's brother before he died. Eudora decided I wasn't good enough either. Made sure I lost my job when I started asking questions about the accounts. My phone lit up with another text from Virgil. Please come home. We can work this out. I miss you. Don't fall for it, Felicity warned. The merger announcement goes public tomorrow. Once that happens, the diner's door chimed. Eudora walked in, Catherine trailing behind her like a designer-clad shadow. Well, isn't this cozy? Eudora's voice could have frozen hell. Juniper, darling, conspiring with disgraced employees now? Felicity grabbed her purse. Remember what I said, she whispered, slipping past them. Whatever she told you is lies, Catherine said quickly. She's just bitter about being pushed out like I was. I stood up, clutching the USB drive. Or about the creative accounting you're using to hide the company's real financial state? Something flickered in Catherine's eyes. Fear? Eudora, you said she didn't know. Quiet, Eudora snapped. She turned to me, her smile razor sharp. Let's be reasonable, Juniper. What would it take for you to disappear quietly? Name your price. I thought about the divorce papers, the secret meetings, the years of subtle manipulation. You really don't get it, do you? This was never about money. Everything is about money, dear. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Don't be foolish. You can't win against us. Watch me. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Eudora? Tell Virgil I'll see him in court. I'm sure the SEC will be very interested in those offshore accounts. Back in Mari's guest room, I plugged in the USB drive. File after file revealed the truth. The company wasn't just failing, it was a house of cards built on fraud. And the merger wasn't a power play, it was a desperate attempt to hide the evidence. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my lawyer. June, we need to talk. Virgil's filing for an emergency hearing tomorrow. Says he has evidence you're mentally unstable. I looked at the files on my screen, then at the latest text from Virgil. Last chance, June. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. I started forwarding files to my lawyer. It was time to show them exactly what happened when you cornered a mentally unstable financial analyst with nothing left to lose. Courthouse hallway felt like a gladiator arena. I stood with my lawyer on one side while Virgil, Catherine, and Eudora huddled with their legal team on the other. The emergency hearing was about to begin, but something felt off. Virgil kept checking his phone, looking increasingly agitated. They're stalling, my lawyer whispered. The judge should have called us in 20 minutes ago. That's when I saw Felicity rushing toward us, clutching a manila envelope. Stop the hearing. She was breathless, her usually perfect hair disheveled. You need to see this first. Eudora moved to intercept her, but Felicity dodged past. It's about Sawyer, she said, looking directly at me. The world tilted sideways. What about Sawyer? The custody papers they're filing. Felicity glanced at Virgil, who had gone pale. They're not just claiming you're unstable. They're claiming Sawyer isn't. Isn't what? But I already knew. The way Eudora had always treated my child differently, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, the constant pressure about having real Ashford heirs. Virgil stepped forward. June, let me explain. Explain what? I ripped open the envelope. Inside were DNA test results dated 3 years ago. You knew? All this time you knew? Mother insisted on the test, he said quietly. After Sawyer's birth, she noticed. Noticed what? My voice echoed through the hallway. That my child wasn't good enough for the precious Ashford bloodline? I was trying to protect you both, Eudora cut in. If this got out. If what got out? I advanced on her. That your perfect son wasn't Sawyer's biological father? That all your grand plans for an Ashford heir were based on a lie? Catherine grabbed Virgil's arm. You told me the child was from a previous relationship. He told you what? Pieces clicked into place. The merger, the rushed divorce, the custody filing. This was never about the company, was it? This was about erasing us completely. June, Virgil pleaded, we can work something out. A generous settlement. In exchange for what? My child? My silence. I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. You know what's funny? I actually felt guilty about exposing your financial fraud. But this, I pulled out my phone, displaying the screen. This just made it easy. What did you do? Eudora's voice sharpened. Check your phones, I said. The SEC should be receiving some very interesting documents right about now, along with these DNA results and evidence of your attempt to use them for extortion. Color drained from their faces as notifications started pinging across their devices. Virgil lunged for my phone, but Mari, who had been quietly filming everything, stepped between us. Touch her, she said calmly, and assault charges will be the least of your worries. Courthouse doors burst open as federal agents streamed in. In the chaos that followed, I watched Eudora's carefully constructed world crumble. Virgil was led away in handcuffs, Catherine collapsed in tears, and Eudora, for the first time in her life, looked genuinely afraid. This isn't over, she hissed as agents approached her. That child is mine, I cut her off. And you'll never come near us again. Later that night, I watched Sawyer sleeping peacefully, unaware of how their world had changed. Mari brought me tea, settling beside me on the couch. You okay? She asked. I thought about the day's events, about the years of manipulation and lies. No, I admitted. But I will be. My phone buzzed with a text from Felicity. There's more you need to know. About Virgil's brother, about what really happened to him. When you're ready. I stared at the message, feeling the weight of more secrets, more lies. But for now, watching my child sleep, I had only one priority, protecting what was mine. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but tonight, in this quiet moment, we were free. And that was enough. 6 months after the courthouse showdown, I thought we were finally safe. Virgil was awaiting trial for financial fraud. Eudora had retreated to her summer home in shame. And Sawyer was thriving in our new apartment across town. But peace, I learned, was just another illusion. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. No return address, just a thick manila envelope that made my stomach drop. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Sawyer at school. Sawyer at the park. Sawyer and me shopping. All taken without our knowledge. My phone rang. Felicity. They're moving against you, she said without preamble. Eudora's hired private investigators. They're building a case. What case? Virgil's DNA test already proved. Not about paternity. About Sawyer's real father. Her voice dropped. They found him June. The room spun. That weekend in Vegas 5 years ago, before I'd even met Virgil. I'd never gotten his name, never thought I'd need it. That's impossible. Nothing's impossible with Eudora's resources. Felicity paused. There's more. Virgil's brother. His death wasn't an accident. I found evidence. A crash from Sawyer's room cut her off. I dropped the phone, running toward the sound. The window was open, curtains billowing in the wind. Sawyer's bed was empty. Sawyer? My voice echoed through the apartment. Baby, where are you? Something crinkled under my foot, a note written in Eudora's elegant script. We need to talk. Alone. My phone buzzed with an address and a warning. Come alone or you'll never see them again. Mari found me throwing up in the bathroom 20 minutes later. The police. Will take too long. I wiped my mouth, grabbing my keys. She'll disappear with Sawyer the moment she sees cops. Then I'm coming with you. No. I showed her the photos. She's been watching us for months. She'll know. The address led to an abandoned warehouse by the docks. Eudora stood in the entrance, looking more haunted than elegant now. "Where's my child?" "Safe," she said. "With their real family." "I am their real family." "Are you?" She pulled out more photos, older ones. Me in Vegas. The man I'd met that weekend. His name is James Mitchell. Successful attorney, married, 2 kids. Imagine the scandal when this hits the press. My hand shook. "What do you want?" "Leave town. Tonight. Sign over custody to the Ashfords and these stay buried." She held up the photos. "Fight us, and not only will James's family learn everything, but every court in the country will know about your indiscretion. You'd destroy an innocent family just to win? To protect my family?" Her smile was cold. "I've done worse." A child's cry echoed from inside the warehouse, Sawyer. I moved toward the sound, but Eudora blocked my path. "Choose carefully, Juniper. Your child can have everything, the Ashford name, wealth, status. Or they can have nothing, watching their mother's reputation burn." My phone buzzed. A message from Felicity. "Whatever she's offering, don't take it. I found proof about Marcus's death. She'll never let you go. Marcus, Virgil's brother. The one who died mysteriously after questioning company finances. The one who'd been engaged to Felicity." "Tick-tock," Eudora said. "What's it going to be?" Another cry from inside. My child was scared, alone, needed me. But if I gave in now, we'd never be free. Eudora would always have this power over us. "Well," she held out custody papers, already drawn up. I thought about Vegas, about secrets and shame, about a woman who'd destroy anything for control. About Marcus, who'd probably stood exactly where I was, facing impossible choices. "No," I said quietly. "Excuse me." I met her eyes, finding strength in my fury. I said no. "You want a war, Eudora? Let's have one. But remember, you taught me how to play dirty." Her face contorted with rage as I pulled out my phone, displaying the recording app. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning. It's about making sure everyone loses together. The warehouse erupted into chaos the moment I pressed send on the recording. Eudora's confession about Marcus, along with the evidence Felicity had gathered, was now in the hands of every major news outlet and law enforcement agency in the state. "What have you done?" Eudora's composure cracked like fine china. "Exactly what you taught me." I stepped closer. "Never start a war you can't win." A door slammed somewhere inside the warehouse. Footsteps echoed, then Virgil emerged from the shadows, holding Sawyer's hand. My child's eyes lit up at the sight of me, but Virgil's grip tightened. "Let them go," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "Or what?" Virgil's laugh was hollow. "You'll destroy what's left of us?" "Too late." "Us." I gestured at the warehouse, the photos, the mess we'd become. "There is no us. There never was. Just your mother's puppet show." "Virgil," Eudora snapped, "take the child, Anne." "No." He released Sawyer's hand. "I'm done taking orders." Sawyer ran to me, wrapping small arms around my legs. I kept my eyes on Virgil, watching him pull out his phone and scroll through messages. "The stories everywhere," he said quietly. Marcus's death, the company fraud, everything. He looked at his mother. "Did you really kill him?" "I protected this family." Eudora's voice rose hysterically. "Everything I did was for control." Felicity's voice cut through the darkness. She stepped out from behind a stack of crates, holding a gun. "Like when you had Marcus's brakes tampered with after he threatened to expose the company's secrets." Eudora's face went ash-white. "You have no proof." "Actually, I pulled out my phone, we do. The mechanic confessed this morning. Turns out your money can't buy everyone's silence." "You planned this," Eudora whispered. "All of it. I learned from the best." I picked up Sawyer, holding them close. But unlike you, I'm not doing this for power. I'm doing it for love. Sirens wailed in the distance. Eudora lunged for her purse. For what, we never found out. Felicity's warning shot hit the ground near her feet. Don't, Felicity said. Marcus deserves justice. Virgil stepped between them, looking older than I'd ever seen him. It's over, Mother. We lost. No, Eudora's eyes darted wildly. I can fix this. I can. Fix what? I asked. Your son's death? The lives you've ruined? The grandchild you tried to steal? Police cars screeched to a halt outside. Mari burst in with officers close behind. June! She rushed to us, checking Sawyer for injuries. Are you okay? I watched as officers handcuffed Eudora, her perfectly manicured world crumbling around her. Virgil stood apart, looking lost. I'm sorry, he said softly. For everything. I should have been stronger. Yes, I agreed. You should have. As they led Eudora away, she turned to me one last time. You think this is victory? You've destroyed everything. No, I shifted Sawyer in my arms. I've protected what matters. The rest was already destroyed by you. Later, as reporters swarmed outside and detectives took statements, Felicity approached me. What now? She asked. I looked at Sawyer, sleeping peacefully in Mari's car. Virgil, giving his statement to police. At the empire of lies Eudora had built, now exposed to the light. Now? I smiled slightly. Now we rebuild. But this time on truth. The morning papers would call it the scandal of the decade. But for me, it was simpler than that. It was the day I stopped being afraid of shadows and started facing the light. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying your enemies. It's in refusing to become them. 1 year later, I sat in the visitor's room of the state prison, watching Eudora through the scratched plexiglass. She looked smaller somehow, her designer clothes replaced by prison orange, her perfect makeup absent. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice lacking its usual command. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I. I placed Felicity's latest letter on the counter between us. But this convinced me. Eudora's eyes flickered to the paper. She told you about Marcus's daughter? The one you forced her to give up for adoption after his death? I kept my voice neutral. Yes, I thought I was protecting our legacy. She touched the glass separating us. Instead, I destroyed it. Outside, Mari waited with Sawyer, who was drawing pictures for their new baby sister, Felicity's daughter born 3 months ago. After everything, she'd chosen to name her Marcus. Virgil asks about you, I said, in his letters from rehab. And do you answer? Sometimes. I studied her face, searching for the formidable woman who'd once terrified me. He's doing better, learning to be his own person. And you. For the first time, her voice held genuine curiosity rather than judgment. Are you happy? Question caught me off guard. Through all our battles, she'd never asked about my happiness. I'm at peace, I answered honestly. Sawyer's thriving. Mari's coffee shop is expanding. And Felicity. I smiled slightly. She's become family in ways you never allowed. The irony isn't lost on me. Eudora's laugh was hollow. I spent years orchestrating the perfect family, only to watch a real one grow from the ashes of my mistakes. A guard signaled 5 minutes remaining. I pulled out one last item, a photo of Sawyer and baby Marcus together. They should know their history, I said, sliding it through the slot. All of it. The good and the bad. Tears, real ones, filled Eudora's eyes. I don't deserve forgiveness. No, I agreed. But they deserve the chance to decide that for themselves someday. As I stood to leave, she pressed her hand against the glass one last time. June? The letter you found that day, the one that started everything, I planted it. I paused. Why? Because I saw myself in you. the strength I'd lost long ago. She met my eyes. I thought breaking you would prove I was still in control. Instead, you showed me what real strength looks like. Sawyer ran to me, waving their drawing. Look, Mommy. It's all of us. Picture showed our strange, beautiful family. Mari and her new girlfriend, Felicity and baby Marcus, even Virgil in his rehab center's garden. And there, in the corner, was a small figure in orange, Grandma Eudora, drawn with the simple forgiveness only children possess. It's perfect, I said, holding them close. Later that night, as I watched both children sleep, Felicity joined me in the nursery. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Not taking revenge when you had the chance? I thought about Eudora's confession, about the satisfaction I could have taken in destroying her completely, about the cycle of pain that would have continued. The best revenge, I said, was breaking the pattern, building something beautiful from something broken. And Virgil, he's writing his own story now. I touched baby Marcus's tiny hand. Just like we all are. My phone buzzed, a text from Mari. Found more of Marcus's old files. You need to see these. Some secrets, it seemed, were still waiting to be uncovered. But this time, I wasn't afraid of the truth. Whatever came next, we would face it together, this unlikely family forged in the aftermath of destruction. 'Cause sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the war, but in choosing which battles are worth fighting. And sometimes the strongest families aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we build from the pieces of what was broken. That's the thing about revenge, it shows you who you really are. Not in how you destroy others, but in what you choose to build instead.
I stared at the wedding invitation in my hand, fingers trembling slightly as I deliberately skipped over one name on the guest list. My stepmother's name, Astrid. Even thinking it left a bitter taste in my mouth. My name is Kala, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person to exclude family from my wedding. But then again, I never thought I'd have a stepmother who'd spend 10 years systematically destroying my relationship with my father either. Are you sure about this? Owen, my fiancé, asked from across our kitchen table. He wasn't judging, just concerned. The morning light caught his worried expression as he sipped his coffee. If I invite her, she'll find a way to make it about her, I said, setting down my pen. Remember my college graduation? Owen winced. He'd been there when Astrid had thrown her perfectly timed fainting spell right as I was walking across the stage. My dad had missed seeing me get my diploma because he was too busy rushing her to the emergency room. Turned out she was just dehydrated. Your dad's going to be upset, Owen said carefully. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Dad's been upset with me since I was 17. That's when Astrid convinced him I was acting out because I asked why she'd thrown away the birthday cards I'd made him. The memory hit harder than I expected. I could still see those cards in the recycling bin, the ones I'd spent hours making every year since I was 6. When I confronted her, Astrid had smiled that saccharine smile of hers and said, "Oh, sweetie, your father needs to declutter his office. We can't keep every little scribble forever." My phone buzzed, a text from my stepsister Tessa. "Hey sis, Mom wants to know if you're still coming for dinner tonight. She's making your favorite lasagna." I smiled, feeling some of the tension ease. My mom Laurel and her husband Vincent had created the warm, supportive home I'd always craved. Tessa, Vincent's daughter, had become the sister I never had. The contrast between my two families couldn't be starker. "You should go," Owen said, reading my expression. "Clear your head. We can finish the invitations tomorrow." I nodded, but my eyes drifted back to the list. There, near the top, was my father's name alone. The empty space next to it felt like a declaration of war. My phone rang, and my stomach dropped when I saw the caller ID. Dad. I let it go to voicemail, something I'd been doing more frequently lately. It wasn't always like this. Before Astrid, Dad and I had been close. He'd taught me to ride a bike, helped with my science projects, cheered at my soccer games. But that man felt like a character in someone else's story now. The voicemail notification popped up, and against my better judgment, I played it. "Kala, honey," my father's voice came through, sounding tired. "Astrid mentioned she saw you at the mall yesterday, but you didn't stop to say hello. She's really hurt. I thought we'd raised you better than that." I clicked it off, my hands shaking again. this time with anger. I hadn't been to the mall in weeks. It was another of Astrid's little lies, designed to drive the wedge between us deeper. That's it, I said, picking up my pen again. In one decisive motion, I crossed my father's name off the list too. They can spend my wedding day together, just like they've spent every other important day of my life for the past decade. Owen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I squeezed back, grateful for his support, but my mind was already racing ahead. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. After years of manipulation and emotional abuse, maybe it was time for Astrid to learn that karma has a way of catching up with people. And I had a feeling she wouldn't like the RSVP life was about to send her way. The lasagna at Mom's house smelled amazing, but my stomach was in knots. Tessa sat across from me at the kitchen island, watching me push food around my plate while Mom and Vincent cleaned up dinner dishes. "Spill it," Tessa said, pointing her fork at me. "You've barely touched Mom's lasagna, and it's your favorite. What happened?" I set my fork down. I crossed Dad off the wedding invitation list. The clatter of dishes in the sink stopped. Mom turned around slowly, her hands still soapy. "You did what?" "After I decided not to invite Astrid, it just happened." I pulled out my phone and played Dad's voicemail for them. The kitchen fell silent, except for his accusations echoing off the tiles. Vincent dried his hands and leaned against the counter. "That woman's got quite an imagination, doesn't she? Considering you were here helping me fix the deck all day yesterday." "That's the thing," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "She knows exactly what she's doing. Remember when I was 19 and Dad promised to help me buy my first car?" Tessa nodded. "The one he backed out of at the last minute?" "Yeah." I found out later that Astrid had convinced him I was too irresponsible because I missed one of her dinner parties. I was working a double shift at the hospital. She knew my schedule. Mom's face darkened. "That reminds me of your high school graduation. When she convinced Dad I was embarrassed by them because I didn't save them front row seats?" I laughed bitterly. "I did save them seats." She moved the reserve signs. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Vincent went to answer it, and my heart stopped when I heard a familiar voice in the hallway. "Is Kala here? I really need to speak with her." "Dad." I shot a panicked look at Tessa, who immediately stood up. "I got this," she whispered, heading toward the front door. I could hear her talking to him, her voice firm but polite. "Graham, this isn't a good time. Maybe you could call first next time. She's my daughter, Tessa." "I have a right." "No, you have a responsibility," Tessa cut in, her voice sharp. "One you've been neglecting for years." I crept closer to listen, Mom right behind me. "That's not fair," Dad protested. "I've always provided for her. Financially, sure. But when's the last time you stood up for her? When's the last time you chose her?" The silence that followed was deafening. "Astrid says," he started. Astrid says, Tessa mimicked. "Do you ever wonder why you only hear about Kala through Astrid? Why you never know what's actually going on in your daughter's life anymore?" I heard Dad sigh. "I just want to talk to her about the wedding. Astrid's devastated about being excluded." "Of course she is," I said, stepping into view. My voice was steadier than I felt. "Because now she can't make it about herself." Dad's face fell when he saw me. He looked older than I remembered. More gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. "Honey, please. We can work this out. Like we worked out the graduation seating? Or the birthday cards? Or the car?" Each example hit him like a physical blow. "Or maybe like yesterday, when I supposedly snubbed Astrid at the mall? She wouldn't lie about. I was here all day," Vincent called from behind me, "helping me rebuild the deck. Want to see the pictures?" Dad's certainty wavered. I could see it in his eyes, that moment of doubt. But then his phone buzzed, and I knew without looking who it was. "I should go," he said, already backing away. "But Kala, please reconsider. She's family." "No," I said quietly. "She's your wife. There's a difference." After he left, I stood in the hallway shaking. Mom wrapped her arms around me, and Tessa joined the hug. "You okay?" Tessa asked. I nodded slowly. "Actually, I am. But I think it's time to show Dad exactly who he chose to believe all these years." "What do you mean?" Mom asked. I smiled, thinking of Astrid's friend Marla, who did quite a lot to say at last month's charity gala after one too many glasses of wine. Let's just say karma's about to get an assist. The country club's annual charity gala was in full swing when I spotted Marla at the bar, already 3 martinis deep. Perfect timing. I smoothed my dress and made my way over, careful to appear casual. Gaya. Marla's face lit up with alcohol-induced warmth. I haven't seen you since. Oh, the incident with your father's investment. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart rate picked up. Investment? Oh dear, Marla giggled, waving the bartender over. I probably shouldn't. Astrid would be furious. But you know about the money, right? The college fund. My college fund. Dad had told me it had been depleted by market crashes. I'd taken out student loans instead, working double shifts to make ends meet. Tell me more, I said, sliding onto the bar stool next to her. 15 minutes later, I was gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white, recording every slurred word as Marla detailed how Astrid had convinced my father to reinvest my college fund into her brother's business venture, the one that conveniently failed 6 months later. The poor man was devastated, Marla hiccuped, but Astrid assured him you'd never find out. She's always been good at managing things. My phone buzzed with a text from Owen. You okay? Been a while. I texted back quickly, getting everything. Stay with Tessa. More happened after that, you know. Marla continued, oblivious to my recording. The inheritance from your grandmother. I froze. What inheritance? Oh, sweetie. Marla's face fell into exaggerated sympathy. Your father's mother left you quite a bit. But Astrid convinced Graham you weren't mature enough yet. They've been managing it for you. The room spun slightly. I remembered Grandma Rose's funeral 3 years ago, how Astrid had handled all the arrangements, keeping me busy with meaningless tasks. How convenient. Kaya. A sharp voice cut through my thoughts. I looked up to see Astrid herself approaching, her designer dress and perfect makeup a stark contrast to Marla's increasingly disheveled state. What a surprise to see you here. I stood up slowly, tucking my phone away. Just catching up with Marla. She's been informative. Astrid's eyes darted between us, noting Marla's drunken state. Something like fear flickered across her face. Marla, dear, I think you've had enough for one evening. But I was just telling Kala about the money. Marla, Astrid's voice cracked like a whip. I believe your husband is looking for you. I smiled, feeling a cold satisfaction as Astrid's perfectly maintained facade cracked further. Don't worry, stepmom. We were just discussing family matters. You know, investments, inheritances. The usual. The color drained from Astrid's face. Whatever Marla said, she's drunk. You can't possibly what? Wonder why my college fund mysteriously vanished. Or why I never knew about Grandma Rose's inheritance. My voice was steady, but my hands shook. Or maybe I can't possibly understand why you've spent the last decade systematically destroying every financial safety net I had. You don't understand, Astrid hissed, grabbing my arm. Your father and I let go. Each word was ice. Or the recording of my entire conversation with Marla goes straight to Dad's phone. Right now. She released me like I'd burned her. Around us, other guests were starting to stare. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. It would destroy your father. No, I said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. You've been doing that just fine on your own. But here's what's going to happen next. You're going to tell him everything, or I will. And trust me, my version will come with proof. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Astrid? Now you know why you're not invited to the wedding. I learned from the best. I don't want anyone stealing focus from the main event. As I walked away, I heard the distinct sound of glass shattering behind me. I didn't turn around. My phone was already buzzing with texts from Owen and Tessa, asking if I got what I needed. Oh yes, I typed back. And so much more. Time for phase 2. The truth about Astrid was finally coming out. But somehow, I had a feeling this was just the beginning of the storm. The recording from the gala sat on my phone like a loaded gun. 3 days had passed, and I still hadn't sent it to Dad. Every time my finger hovered over the send button, I remembered his face at my high school graduation, beaming with pride before Astrid whispered something in his ear and led him away. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Dad standing there alone. My heart jumped into my throat. I opened the door. Did Astrid tell you? Tell me what? He looked exhausted, his suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. I came because I found something in my office last night. He pulled out a familiar manila envelope. My college acceptance letters. The ones Astrid had told him I'd thrown away in a tantrum. I was cleaning out the filing cabinet, he said, his voice rough. These were hidden behind the tax records. Along with these, he handed me a stack of birthday cards. My birthday cards, the ones I'd thought were thrown away years ago. They were rubber-banded together, stuffed in the back of the cabinet where I'd never think to look. Dad. Please, he cut me off. Let me finish. I also found documentation about your grandmother's inheritance. My fingers tightened on the doorframe. And I need to know what else I've missed. His eyes met mine, pleading. What else has she? He stopped, swallowing hard. What else have I let happen? I pulled out my phone, pulled up the recording. You might want to sit down for this. We moved to the kitchen. Owen, who'd been quietly working in the home office, appeared with coffee and then tactfully disappeared again. I played the recording. Dad's face grew paler with each revelation. When Marla's slurred voice detailed how Astrid had orchestrated the failed investment of my college fund. His coffee cup clattered against the saucer. I trusted her, he whispered. She said your mother was poisoning you against us, that we needed to protect the family assets. The family assets? My laugh was bitter. Dad, I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for college. I ate ramen for dinner for 3 years. Meanwhile, Astrid was redecorating the house with my inheritance. I'll make it right, he said quickly. I'll transfer the money back. It's not about the money. The words exploded out of me. It's about you believing her over me. Every single time. It's about watching you choose her lies over your own daughter's truth for 10 years. His phone buzzed, Astrid's ringtone. He stared at it, then declined the call. She knows I found the documents, he said quietly. She's been calling all morning, trying to explain. And I told her I needed time to think. He ran a hand through his gray hair. The way she reacted, it was like a switch flipped. She started crying, saying I was abandoning her just like everyone else, that she'd done everything for our family. That's her playbook, Dad. Create a crisis, make herself the victim, wait for you to comfort her and forget about everything else. His phone buzzed again, a text this time. I caught a glimpse of the message. If you choose her over me, I'll make sure you regret it. Dad's hands shook as he read it. I've been such a fool. Yes, I said simply. You have. He looked up at me, eyes wet. Can you ever forgive me? I stood up, gathering the coffee cups. That depends. On what? On what you do next. I placed the cups in the sink, keeping my back to him. Because Astrid's not going to stop. She's going to escalate. And I need to know if you're finally ready to stand up to her, or if you're going to cave the moment she turns on the waterworks. His phone buzzed again. And again. And again. I should go, he said, standing. I need to think. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As he reached the door, he turned back. Calla? Thank you for showing me the truth. After he left, Owen emerged from the office and wrapped his arms around me. You okay? I leaned into him, watching Dad's car pull away through the window. Ask me tomorrow. Something tells me this is just the calm before the storm. The invitation to Astrid's birthday dinner arrived 3 days after Dad's visit. Gold-embossed cardstock, because of course it was. The note inside read, "Family should stick together. Let's start fresh. Love, Dad." Dad's handwriting, but Astrid's words. I could practically hear her dictating them. You don't have to go, Owen said, watching me stare at the invitation. Actually, I do. I pulled out my phone, showing him the text from Marla. Astrid's telling everyone you're having a breakdown. Says you're making up stories about her. Better show up and prove her wrong. The restaurant was exactly Astrid's style. Expensive, pretentious, and designed to make everyone else feel inadequate. I arrived 10 minutes late, wearing the red dress she'd once called a bit cheap-looking. Petty? Maybe. But it felt like armor. Darling, Astrid's voice carried across the private dining room. She air-kissed my cheeks, her fingers digging into my arms. We were starting to worry. The table was full of her friends, all perfectly coiffed, all watching our interaction like vultures. Dad sat at the head of the table, managing a weak smile. "Happy birthday," I said, handing her a small wrapped package. "I hope you like it." She opened it right there, something she'd never done with my gifts before. Inside was a framed photo of Dad and me from my high school graduation, taken before she'd pulled him away. Her smile froze. "How thoughtful," she said, setting it aside without another glance. Though perhaps a bit self-centered to give someone a photo they're not even in. A few of her friends tittered. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Oh, I thought you'd appreciate it," I said sweetly. "Since you worked so hard to recreate that moment at every major event in my life." The tittering stopped. Astrid's face hardened for a split second before smoothing into concerned sympathy. "Graham," she said, touching Dad's arm. "This is exactly what I was telling you about. These paranoid accusations." "You mean like the paranoid accusation that I threw away my college acceptance letters?" I pulled out my phone. "The ones Dad found hidden in your filing cabinet?" The room went silent. One of Astrid's friends, not Marla, choked on her wine. "Or maybe we should discuss my grandmother's inheritance?" I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "The one you've been managing for me?" "Caleb," Dad warned, but his voice lacked conviction. Astrid stood up, tears gathering in her eyes. "I can't believe you'd ruin my birthday with these horrible lies." "Graham, please. Show them the recording," Dad said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Astrid's face went white. "What recording?" she whispered. "From the gala," Dad said, standing too. "The one where Marla explained exactly how you manipulated our daughter's finances." Astrid's mask cracked completely. She grabbed my gift and hurled it across the room. The frame shattered against the wall. "You ungrateful little bitch," she hissed. "Everything I did was to protect this family from you. Your constant demands, your attention-seeking." "Astrid." Dad's voice cut through her tirade. "That's enough." But she was beyond stopping. "You think you've won? You think exposing me changes anything? I've been managing your father for 10 years. He always chooses me. Always." She turned to Dad, tears flowing freely now. "Graham, darling, you know how she twists things. Remember how she tried to come between us before? How she—" "Stop." Dad's voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop." He walked over to the broken frame and picked up the photo, carefully brushing off the glass. Without another word, he walked out. Astrid stared after him, then turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." I stood up, addressing her stunned friends. "Check your phones. I just sent you all the recording." "Happy birthday, Astrid." As I walked out, I heard the simultaneous ping of multiple phones, followed by Astrid's scream of rage. But I didn't look back. Outside, Dad was waiting by my car. "I'm sorry," he said, holding out the photo. "For everything." I took the photo but couldn't meet his eyes. "Sorry isn't enough anymore, Dad. You need to decide, really decide, who you're going to believe from now on." He nodded slowly. "I know. And I think I finally do." 2 weeks after Astrid's birthday meltdown, I found myself staring at my phone, reading a series of increasingly frantic texts from Dad. "Please call me. Astrid's threatening to expose company irregularities. She says she has proof I mishandled client funds." I could lose everything. My hands shook as I dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "She's lying," I said immediately. "No." His voice was hollow. "She's not. Years ago, I made some questionable decisions. She helped cover them up. Said she was protecting our family." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What kind of decisions?" "The kind that could land me in prison." He laughed, a broken sound. "She kept records of everything. Insurance, she called it." I sank onto my couch. "So that's how she controlled you all these years." "Kala, she's demanding I make a public statement. Say you fabricated everything about her, that you're unstable, trying to destroy our family because you never accepted the divorce." My throat closed up. "And if you don't, she'll turn over the documents to the SEC." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, I asked, "What are you going to do? What choice do I have?" His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." The line went dead. An hour later, my phone exploded with notifications. Dad's statement was everywhere, shared across social media by Astrid's friends. Each word felt like a physical blow. My daughter's recent accusations against my wife stem from deep-seated emotional issues and inability to accept our blended family. The allegations are completely false, motivated by jealousy and resentment. We hope she gets the help she needs. Owen found me still on the couch, staring at my phone.
Jesús, calla.
Have you seen? Yeah. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. I've seen. We have proof she's lying. The recording, the documents. Doesn't matter. I showed him the latest text from Dad. Please understand. I had no choice. Actually, a new voice said, he did. I looked up to see Tessa in my doorway, holding a manila envelope. Remember when you told me about Astrid's insurance? I had a friend at the SEC look into your dad's company records. She pulled out a stack of papers. Turns out Astrid's been embezzling money for years. Small amounts well hidden. She used your dad's passwords, made it look like his transactions. The proof she has against him? She created it. But my mind raced. That means your dad just publicly destroyed you to protect himself from crimes he didn't even commit. Tessa's voice was gentle but firm. The question is, what are you going to do about it? My phone buzzed again. A text from Astrid. See? He'll always choose me. Back off now, or there's more where that came from. I stared at the message, feeling something inside me finally break. All these years, I'd wanted revenge on Astrid while trying to salvage my relationship with Dad. But maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe they both needed to face the consequences of their choices. Tessa, I said slowly, can your SEC friend prove it was Astrid? Already has. Just waiting for someone to file a formal complaint. Owen sat beside me, taking my hand. Are you sure? This would destroy them both. They destroyed themselves. I squeezed his hand, then let go, reaching for the papers. Dad had a choice. He chose to sacrifice me instead of standing up to her. Again. And now, I looked at the evidence in my hands. Proof of years of financial fraud, all leading back to Astrid. My father's public betrayal still burned on my phone screen. Sometimes I realized the worst wounds come from the people who are supposed to love us most. Now, I said, I choose myself. I picked up my phone to make the call that would change everything. As it rang, I received one final text from Dad. I hope someday you'll understand. I already do, I whispered as the SEC officer answered. That's the problem. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear. I was in the bridal suite with Tessa and Mom when Marla burst in, still wearing her hospital scrubs. You need to see this, she said, thrusting her phone at me. A text from Astrid, at Memorial Hospital. Emergency surgery. Graham needs to be here. His daughter will understand, she always does. My hands clenched around the phone. When did she send this? An hour ago. But Kala. Marla's face was grim. I just finished my shift in the ER. She's not there. She never was. The room went silent. 10 years of manipulations, lies, and stolen moments crystallized into this final attempt to ruin my wedding day. Dad's not coming, is he? My voice sounded hollow. Mom stepped forward, but I held up my hand. No, it's okay. I already asked Vincent to walk me down the aisle. I thought maybe. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. At hospital with Astrid. Surgery complications. I'm so sorry. Before I could respond, another message came through. This one from Astrid. Karma's funny, isn't it? Enjoy your special day. Alone. Something inside me snapped. Tessa, drive me to their house. Kala, the ceremony starts in 2 hours. Exactly. Time for one last conversation. 20 minutes later, still in my wedding dress, I stood on their doorstep. Dad opened the door, his face draining of color. You're supposed to be at the hospital, I said quietly. Astrid needed to come home for something. Stop lying. I pushed past him into the foyer. Astrid stood at the top of the stairs, perfectly healthy, her face twisting with rage when she saw me. How dare you come here? How dare I? My laugh echoed off the walls. You faked a medical emergency to keep my father from my wedding. But you couldn't even commit to the lie, could you? Had to come home to watch your handiwork unfold. Graham, Astrid called, her voice trembling. She's having another episode. The SEC investigation results came back yesterday. I cut in. Dad stiffened. Want to know what they found, Dad? All those financial crimes you thought you committed? The ones Astrid was protecting you from? It was her. All of it. He won't believe you, Astrid snapped. He never does. Show him, Tessa said from behind me. Show him the proof. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the SEC findings. Dad's hands shook as he read. You. He looked up at Astrid. You did this? All of it. I did it for us. She descended the stairs, reaching for him. Everything I did was to keep our family together. By stealing from my company? By blackmailing me into denouncing my own daughter. She was trying to come between us. She always has. No, I said softly. You did that all on your own. Astrid's mask finally cracked completely. You ungrateful little bitch. I gave you a family. I already had a family. I turned to Dad. And now you have a choice. Real surgery or not, Astrid will always have an emergency on my wedding day. She'll always need you more. She'll always make you choose. Graham, please, Astrid begged. Don't let her manipulate you like this. Dad looked between us, 10 years of lies finally unraveling before his eyes. I think, he said slowly, I'm done choosing. He walked to the door, then turned back.
Calla?
Would your offer to walk you down the aisle still stand? Astrid screamed in rage, but the sound barely registered. I looked at my father, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen in years, clarity. No, I said gently. Vincent is walking me down the aisle. He's earned that right. But there's an empty seat in the front row if you'd like to actually see your daughter get married. Dad nodded, tears in his eyes. I'd like that very much. As we left, Astrid's threats and screams fading behind us, I felt lighter than I had in years. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about finally breaking free. Vincent's arm was steady as he walked me down the aisle. Owen waited at the altar, beaming, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Then I caught a glimpse of Dad in the front row, sitting alone, and felt an unexpected twinge of something. Not regret exactly. More like acceptance. The ceremony passed in a blur of vows and rings and kisses. At the reception, Tessa clinked her glass for the maid of honor speech. When I first met Calla, she said, grinning at me, I thought no one could possibly be as perfect as my dad claimed his new stepdaughter was. Turns out, he wasn't exaggerating. Laughter rippled through the crowd. I caught Vincent's eye across the table, saw him wipe away a tear. But what makes Calla special isn't her perfection, Tessa continued. It's her ability to choose love over bitterness, growth over revenge, even when the easier path was right there. Mom squeezed my hand under the table. We both knew what Tessa meant. The SEC investigation into Astrid was ongoing, but I declined to press additional charges. Some might call it mercy, but really it was freedom. Freedom from letting her actions dictate my choices anymore. During the father-daughter dance, I swayed with Vincent to "What a Wonderful World." Over his shoulder, I saw Dad slip outside to the garden. After the song ended, I found him sitting on a bench, holding an envelope. I thought about waiting to give you this, he said, standing as I approached. But I need you to know. I need to say, Dad, please. He held out the envelope. Read it when you're ready. When it won't cast a shadow over today. I took it, tucking it into a fold of my dress. The SEC investigator called yesterday. I know. He smiled sadly. I've been cooperating fully. The company will survive, but my reputation. He shrugged. Maybe it's time for retirement anyway. And Astrid. Divorce papers were served this morning. He looked older, but somehow lighter. 10 years of choices I can't take back. But I can make better ones now. Inside, the DJ called for all couples to join the dance floor. Owen appeared in the doorway, his bow tie slightly crooked. That's my cue, I said. Dad nodded.
Calla?
Thank you for my seat today. I know I didn't deserve it. No, I agreed. You didn't. But family is complicated, isn't it? Later that night, in our hotel room, I finally opened Dad's letter while Owen was in the shower. Inside were two things: a check for the exact amount of my grandmother's inheritance, with interest, and a single page in Dad's handwriting. My dearest daughter, I spent 10 years trying to keep my family together by letting someone tear it apart. I convinced myself I was protecting you by hurting you. The truth is, I was protecting myself from having to make hard choices. You made those choices instead. You chose integrity over comfort, truth over peace, growth over bitterness. You became everything I should have been. The check enclosed is yours by right, but it's not an apology. Money can't fix what I broke. This letter isn't an apology either. Some things are beyond simple apologies. Instead, it's a promise. To be better. To choose better. To earn back, day by day, the right to be part of your life. Not as the father who gave you away today, but as the father who might someday deserve to be chosen back. All my love. Dad. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into its envelope. Through the window, I could see the garden where we talked earlier. The bench was empty now, but something had shifted in that space between us. Not forgiveness exactly, that would take time, but possibility. And sometimes that's enough. Owen emerged from the bathroom, hair damp. Everything okay? I smiled, setting the letter aside. Yeah, I think it finally is. The next morning, we'd leave for our honeymoon. Dad would face the consequences of his choices. Astrid would face hers. But tonight, surrounded by the family I'd chosen and the love I'd built, I realized that the best revenge wasn't in destroying what had hurt me. It was in growing beyond it.